Welcome or welcome back, new viewers and game bears. It is time for a new subscriber special, and today we have ourselves a new tier list. But not just any tier list, this is the 1000 sub special tier list. Thank you everybody for helping me get to that wonderful milestone, and along with that, this tier list is about the different main series Pokemon games from Generation 1 all the way up to Generation 9 at the time of me making this video. So, this will be a tier list from S tier to F tier. My personal opinions on each and every one of these games. I'll go over the content each game has, maybe the different Pokemon that are available in each games, the different features, the soundtrack even, and just my personal enjoyment of the games over the years. So, let us begin this nice list of special, but a few ground rules. The closer I have them to each tier list, the stronger my opinion of them, and then in the lower tiers, the farther away I have them on the tier list, the weaker my opinion of them are. So, for example, say I put Pokemon Platinum in S tier, like at the top of S tier, like right here, and then I put Pokemon Diamond like right next to it, I have a stronger opinion of Pokemon Platinum over Diamond. However, if I were to put, say, Pokemon Sword and Shield in F tier, at the beginning part of F tier, but Legends Arceus on the farther part of it, that means I dislike Legends Arceus a bit more. And finally, just like in some of my previous Pokemon tier lists, if a game has a remake, the original will have no bearing on that. Same with the remake. Those are separate games, though, are based on each other, or the later ones are based on the former one, and I think should be judged separately, in my opinion, even if I do bring up some things I have fixed from the original. So, let us begin with Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. I always played Pokemon Pearl. I remember back when I was in elementary school, I wanted to play Pokemon Diamond, but then my brother got me this case with Pokemon Pearl in it. Well, that was Pokemon Pearl. But surprise, surprise, it was actually a copy of Pokemon Conquest, and that's how I first played that game, but this isn't a tier list on spin-offs, it's on main series games. And then later, around 2016 was when I finally played Pokemon Pearl, a copy of my friend's back then. Of a friend of mine. So, Pokemon Pearl, that was probably of the first 6 generations, the first 6 regions. Sinnoh was the last one I got to experience via gameplay. I've experienced Sinnoh before with things like the anime, if that counts, but in this case, since we're not talking about the anime, that kind of has no bearing on this. And I think Sinnoh's probably the weakest region of the first 6 from my personal experience. Some people are going to think differently, because I know Sinnoh is a very well-loved region, and honestly, understandably enough. I mean, I do like the different city locations, that stuff is fine. But the Pokemon variety is kind of ass in this game. I mean, it's infamous that, you know, if you didn't choose Charmander, luckily I did, your literal only fire-type option is freaking Rapidash. And Rapidash is kind of average to underwhelming, probably a little mid too, even back by Gen 4 standards. So, like, not even just that, but there's so few ice types, there's so few dragon types. The main Sinnoh dex is mostly just legendary Pokemon and or evolutions to previous Pokemon, which on one hand is really cool, on the other hand, it just gives you even less options since, hey, look at that, most of them are locked to the post-game. But this isn't the first time we heard about that, has it? Oh well. But, that being said, I think, and it's not even just that, like, some of the enemy Pokemon variety, too. Like, you're mostly just seeing Glameow or Zubat or Geodude or, like, Starly for most of the game. Whether it's before the first gym or around the time you get to the champion. It's just, it's kind of underwhelming to me, and I feel like they could have put in more Pokemon to make it feel more diverse, you know? So for that, I put it at C tier. Bit of an overrated game, I'd say. Now, Pokemon Platinum, on the other hand, maybe I shouldn't really be voting on this one, same with Pokemon Emerald, because these are, of all the Pokemon games on this list that you see here, these are the only ones I barely played, but I've seen other people play it enough that I think I can make somewhat of an opinion of it, and it is, and I hear, from what I hear and from what I've seen, it is a pretty big upgrade from the original Diamond Pearl. It runs faster, there are more Pokemon available, I kind of do one of my favorite fire types, by the way, and some of the boss fights, like Cynthia, were rebalanced to be a little bit easier compared to their Diamond and Pearl counterparts. Not only that, but, oh yeah, I forgot to mention the soundtrack. The Song of Diamond and Pearl is alright, far from the strongest soundtrack in any Pokemon game. I mean, the Elite Four, like, pre-battle theme is pretty cool, and the Lake Guardian theme is also really cool, but besides those, I can't really think of any other Pokemon songs of Diamond and Pearl that I think are noteworthy in my opinion. And that goes over to Platinum as well, I'd say. So, yes, it is an upgrade. I think I'd put it in, like, low B tier. Alright, you all know me on this channel. Heart Gold and Soul Silver, specifically Heart Gold, was my second Pokemon game after Pokemon Gold. And y'all know how much friggin' nostalgia I have for this game. I love this game. Probably my second favorite game of all time, specifically Heart Gold is what I'm talking about here, behind Super Smash Bros. Melee, if y'all know me well enough on this channel. Now I'm going to go into why, and you're going to get a lot of reasons, so prepare for the earful, and maybe need to lower the volume a little bit because it's going to get real passionate up in here. Alright, besides nostalgia talking over here, since I stated it's my second favorite, or it's my second Pokemon game ever, since my first few Pokemon experiences were Johto, this thing does everything from the original Pokemon Gold, but makes it so much better. It adds so much more. I'd say this and Black and White 2 probably have the most content of any Pokemon game, and we'll get to that part later on, of course. But just the immense amount of things you can do, not only things that were in the original, like the 16 badges, or the fight with Red, or whatever, but you can even rematch those gym leaders in this version. Like, I like the Gen 4 art style for it, which, oh, don't get used to that. Later remakes will definitely butcher that a bit. But along with that, oh, you know what, I just realized Pichu and Eevee isn't down here, but, well, we'll rank that later, it's fine. But, the amount of legendary Pokemon you can catch, which me personally I always like. Some people didn't really find that to be the best thing, but I like it when I can catch multiple legendaries in a game, and you'll see that later on in this list as well. The Battle Frontier is really cool. This is my only exposure to the Sinnoh-based Battle Frontier. Since I never made it all that far in Platinum, for multiple reasons, but still. What else can I think of? Oh wait, y'all know how much of a simp I am. Best Girl Jasmine has her best design in this game, so it's definitely getting plus points for that. The Pokewalker was always a really neat feature. I kind of wish I still had mine. I could have sold it for a few hundred, but oh well. What else can I think of? The Pokeathlon is actually a really underrated side mode that I hope returns in a future game. And back to the Battle Frontier. A very good battle facility, but far from the best one in my opinion. We'll get to that later on, though. A lot of people will probably disagree with me on that one, either between this or the Emerald version, but there's another battle facility I like more personally. What else could I say about this game that I honestly haven't said already? Really neat soundtrack as well. Soundtrack. Definitely a huge step up from the original Pokemon Gold. And it's just such a good soundtrack. And all the options that you get, all the content you can have. Shiny hunting, well, there isn't any extravagant ways to shiny on Pokemon. I don't think we'll have that till Generation 6. The vast amount of Pokemon that are available compared to the original is a really nice step up too. And there's a lot of other level balancing compared to the original, like how the Azalea Town Silver fight. How his starter will be level 16, I believe. So if you chose Cyndaquil, he'll end up having a level 16 Crocodile, which shouldn't be possible. That was changed in the remake to all three of his starter Pokemon, no matter which one you chose, will be level 18 in that fight. Which I think is pretty neat. Honestly, besides that, well, the phone system was also rebalanced a little bit too. One thing that I did have a gripe with in the original Pokemon Gold that this game definitely fixed is how stone evolutions weren't available until the post-game for some reason. So I remember when I first played Pokemon Gold, I had a Weepinbell on my team. Too bad I couldn't frickin' evolve the damn thing because you can't get a Leaf Stone in the base game until you've beaten Lance. Why did they do that? I don't get it. And there's so many Pokemon in Gen 2 that evolve via stone. Sunkern, Vulpix, Growlithe, Staryu, Poliwhirl. There's some other ones I'm forgetting. Pikachu, but there's no way you're getting Pikachu at that point in the game. Trying to remember what else evolves via Stone Evolution between Gen 1 and 2. I know there's more of them. Jigglypuff, Clefairy, Nidorino, and Nidorina. Like, there's so many Pokemon that evolve via Stone. Gloom's another one. I already said Weepinbell. Like, why are there Executes? Like, why are there so many Pokemon that evolved via stones, but you can't even get them through until the postgame? So, if you wanted a Victreebel, if you wanted an Arcanine, if you wanted a Poliwrath, whatever, in the original Pokemon Gold, you can get that. However, Heart Gold and Soul Silver fixes that in multiple ways, in fact. Whether that's through the bug catching contest, which is definitely rebalanced from how rigged it was in the original, but we'll get to that later. You can get it from NPCs that you have that you exchange phone numbers with, and that's another thing this fixes from the original. In the original, you can only have a set amount of phone numbers. However, in this game, you can have an unlimited amount of phone numbers with different NPCs, which is really great. So you can do endless rebattling for grinding purposes, whether you're grinding for DD4, whatever. Maybe you're trying to get a certain Pokemon up a certain level for, like, and they're competitively viable, and you're trying to use them in Battle Frontier, all of that stuff. But along with that, the Pokeathlon was my #1 way of getting Pokemon Evolution Stones, especially Evolution Stones introduced in Gen 4, like the Dusk Stone or the Shiny Stone. Because I remember I used to grind the Battleathon all the time back in elementary school. I believe I was in the 4th grade at the time. Black and White was the latest Pokemon game. And I remember having a Murkrow that I got from the Safari Zone. Oh yeah, the Safari Zone, another thing that Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver added that wasn't in the original Gold and Silver. However, was originally going to be, but due to time constraints had to be removed. And some other areas that were really small, like Mount Moon or Viridian Forest, were also expanded too. It's like... And then back to the thing about the Pokeathlon. I'm sorry, I'm getting all over the place over here. Like, that'll allow you to get Honchkrow if you want, Miss Magius if you wanted. If you could get a Ralts, you could get Gallade that way. And going back to the battles, the Safari Zone. I remember getting Pokemon like Riolu and Metang and Lairon and Duskull in there that you can't, well, because most of them didn't even exist in the original. But I like that I was able to get these guys probably after beating the Elite Four and get so many extremely rare and extremely powerful Pokemon from Gen 3 or 4. I remember even getting Slackoths, not specifically from the Safari Zone, but from hitting trees, and that was where my love for slacking started. I remember I initially kept it as a Vigoroth for a while because I didn't like Slacking's ability, but I was like, you know what, I caved in, I evolved the damn thing, and honestly, I really liked how Slacking played, despite, you know, its god-awful ability. So, y'all know where my love for Slacking comes from there. Like, what is there not to like about this game? Also, that Best Girl Jasmine's in it. Have I said that already? Well, I'm gonna say it again. But, yeah, just, there's so much to like about this game. Have I ever, I know I can just get an emulator of this game, but if I ever find a decently priced physical copy that actually works of Pokemon Heart Gold, I am snatching that thing, whether it's off eBay or if GameStop ever sells them again. At the time of making this video, GameStop does still exist, so who knows? Maybe they don't exist in the future, I don't know. But there's just so much to like about this game. If I ever see a physical copy again, I'm definitely going to snatch it up and play that casually while, you know, using emulators for the channel, of course. But I've rambled on long enough for the all-time best Pokemon game and one of my all-time favorite games. So, Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you get Super S tier even. You're my favorite all-time Pokemon game. But anyways, let's give some of the other Pokemon games a little spotlight. Next up, Pokemon Black and White. Well, I have a lot of nostalgia for this game. I'm going to put it low S tier. And yeah, at the time of making this video, I am currently doing a Pokemon Black Nuzlocke. And so far, I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I remember getting this game for, I remember getting this game, my mother bought it for me for my 9th birthday back in 2011. And, like, it was also around the time after the Celebi event had been out for Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver, and I remember getting that a few weeks prior. But I remember playing this game the entire weekend, kind of just grinding up for the first gym. That's all I did, because, you know me, I've stated it multiple times on this channel, I always like being prepared before the first gym fight in every Pokemon game. I do this all the time. Like, I can't think of one Pokemon game I haven't done this in. But the amount of different Pokemon, I kind of like how Black and White, a lot of people didn't like this, but me personally, I thought it was fine. Unlike what they did with the anime, but we're not talking about the anime. This being a soft reboot for the franchise. Like how there's 156 Pokemon, some of which are just unreleased events. Well, not unreleased events, but later released events, you know, like Keldeo or Genesect, for example. And I remember getting except for Genesect, I remember getting the other three, Keldeo, Victini, especially Victini. I still have my old mystery gift paper, actually. I don't have my old copy of Pokemon Black anymore, but I still have that. If it still had use, I could see that really going for a lot on eBay, but sadly, that's not the case. And I remember getting Keldeo, but we'll talk about that Keldeo event later on when we talk about Black and White 2. Anyways, the game is one of the more challenging Pokemon games, definitely. I don't remember it being that challenging when I was in elementary school, but now playing the Nuzlocke, yeah, it's got a little more challenge into it than I remember. Probably because again, like I stated, I used to overlevel all the time. Like, I had a level 30, 40 freaking Emboar by, like, the 3rd gym. And I don't regret doing that back then. I like the different Pokemon that are available. Like, you got Escadrille, you got the 3 stars. Yes, I like Emboar. Y'all know I like Emboar. And Samurot's alright. And, Superior's okay too, I guess. Even with and this is before Contrary, by the way, so there's that. Stoutland's a nice doggo. Bisharp's awesome. Conkeldur's cool. Essentially, I mean, that's one small minus point of this game, is that it being a reboot, there's going to be a lot of rehashed Pokemon. Like, Amoonguss is essentially this generation's Electrode, though if you're playing doubles, is one of the best Pokemon to ever be created, so I bet those people are thanking them for that, but yeah. Escadrille is essentially Sandslash, but way better in every way. Hydreigon's obviously this region's Dragonite, but again, way better in every way, in my opinion. What else? There's so many others. Woobat is basically Zubat, and Swoobat's basically Golbat. You might as well give Swoobat an evolution. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. But whatever. Maybe someday that'll happen. Who knows? The Elemental Monkeys, look, I think they're underrated personally, but I see why people don't like them. They're literally just discount starter Pokemon. And it's like they're just weaker starter Pokemon in every way, and they purely exist, I think, for like the first gym to teach new players how type matchups work, or at least how the original 3 type matchups work of Grass, Water, Fire. What other Pokemon can I think of? Garbodor is essentially just Weezing / Muck in one, if you can believe that. There's a lot of other examples, like Kling is basically just the Magnemite line, but less cool. And too bad, I kind of want to like Kling, but I wish I'd have been more going for it. Any other examples I can think of? Conkeldurr is literally just Machamp, but better in every way, at least in battle, though I still prefer Machamp's design, I think. Gigalith is just Golem. Reuniclus, and... Actually, never mind about those. They're a little more original, I'd say. Seismitoad is basically just a Poliwag line, but again, better in my opinion. There's a lot of similarities between Gen 5 Pokemon and Gen 1 Pokemon to exemplify the fact that, yeah, this is a soft reboot for the franchise. A decent soft reboot, in my opinion. But along with that, a lot of the gym leaders' designs and just city designs, I mean, hey, the Big Bad Dravale City or Nimbasa City, and different gym leaders and soundtrack. Oh yeah, Black and White also has one of the best soundtracks of any Pokemon game. Route 10 to be specific. The Elite Four theme is also really good. What else? Endless Battle theme is really neat. Gets This Battle theme is real cool. The main Pokemon battle theme, easily the best battle theme, like normal battle theme of any Pokemon game. I don't care what anyone says. I love this battle theme. This is the one song along Route 10 that you can remix any which way. You can take away most of the notes and it'll still be a perfect song. I love both of those songs so much. A lot of the route designs in this game is pretty decent too. This is the first game, along with its sequel, to have the seasonal gimmick, which later games will kind of have too, but in like different secluded routes like what X and Y and Scarlet and Violet did. But I think it's a real neat change of pace, especially for the level design, depending on which route you're on. Say it's wintertime or it's fall. If it's wintertime, you could have different routes available to you to get certain special items, like in Twist Mountain, for example. However, if you're in fall, you'll have like leaf piles that you could get secret items from, or trainers could hide in. I really like that. I don't think they do much with spring or summer, at least to my memory, but the other 2 seasons they definitely do quite a bit with. Heck, in wintertime, in certain routes, any water will turn to ice that you can slide on and get certain special items you can get normally, or just you have a better way to get those items. Where if it were summertime, you could just surf over them. Something like that. I like those type of changes. Though the summer, like this, the seasonal system works a little funny in my opinion. For some reason it goes by the month and not how seasons work in real life depending on where you live. For me personally, it would have been better to code it that way. And if you wanted a certain season, just change the time on your DS. Simple as that, or 3DS if you're playing it on there. Now, if you're playing it on an emulator, a little easier said than done there, but yeah. But like how it works is, say it's February, it'll be wintertime, but then when it's March, it's spring, and then when it's April, it's summer in game, and then when it's May, it's fall. I don't think that's like the exact months that plays in, but I think you get the gist. That I think is a little odd in my opinion. I guess they do it that way just so you only have to wait a month if you want a certain season to show up, but again, just change the time on your DS if you want to. That's all you really have to do. Like, the game doesn't punish you for doing that. But let's say a lot of legendary Pokemon designs, like our Tau trio over here, or Tau duo, not counting Kyurem, over here are really cool. Reshiram and Zekrom are real neat. Like, what's there not to like about this game? I love this game so much. And Team Plasma, I think, are really cool villains, albeit a little hypocritical, but whatever. Like, I really love this game, can't you not tell? Or can you tell? Alright, Black and White 2, I'm putting this in S tier as well. My second favorite Pokemon game, specifically White 2, was the one I played back in elementary school in the 5th grade. And Pokemon Black was the version I played, never played White, just had to point that out real fast. So, this game is pretty much the first game, but better in every way. We're no longer limited to the original 156 of Gen 5, but now we have access to many Pokemon from Gen 1 to 4, which Pokemon Black, we only had after the post-game, which I remember, actually, going back to Pokemon Black for a second, I remember I used to watch battle videos all the time back in elementary school of other people doing battles, sometimes full-on VGC matches, which I didn't know about at the time, to be honest with you. Other times seeing like, I remember this one guy having, like, 5 shiny Dialgas on his team, and like 1 Quagsire. I'm like, how did you get all those? And that's when I first got exposed to the world of hacking. Everybody, never hacked myself, just how I learned of its existence. And I remember one video I saw, because the first few videos I saw were of just Gen 5 Pokemon, okay? But then I remember seeing a Suicune. I'm like, wait a minute, Suicune's in this game? And this was before I beat the game back when I was in the 3rd grade. And then, like, learning that, I was like, hey, I didn't know you could get Gen 1 to 4 Pokemon in the game. And then once I finally beat the game, because I remember seeing my older sister being Pokemon Black and White, and having Reshiram, and I remember it was just before I finished the 3rd grade. So I started grinding, because at the time, I think it was like May or June of 2011, so the game had been out for a couple months at that point. And I remember I used to just, and again, back to the over-leveling thing, I remember I had like a level 70 Enbor by that point. So I pretty much soloed the entire game just with my Enbor and like a level 50, like a level 40 Crocodile, a level 40 Ferrothorn, I think around a level 40 Jellicent I had. I forgot what else I had, but some other things like that. I think I had Hexers too that was kind of underleveled. So I pretty much just breezed through the rest of the game with my Enbor. Yeah, and that included the end fight, that included the Getsus fight, taking surfs from his Hydreigon, all that stuff, and I just kept healing anytime I got low on HP, and pretty much just went through the entire thing just with my Enbor. And I think I remember feigning to Caitlyn too, the Psychic type Elite Four, whatever. But that's just a little thing with that as well, Pokemon Black. Going back to that, but back to Black and White too. Having Pokemon, oh yeah, wait. Alright, I'm all over the place, I apologize for that. Back to Black and White just for a little longer. And after beating the Elite Four, I finally found out, hey, you can get Pokemon from Gen 1 to 4 in this. And then we're seeing Pokemon like Wingull and Gligar and all that stuff, which I thought was really, 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 really neat. Though it got spoiled for me thanks to watching all those battle videos, it would have been better, it would have been even better, actually, had I found that as a nice little surprise, which I think works well in the game's favor. That if you were tired of the original 156 of Gen 5, once you beat the game, you're rewarded with Pokemon from Gen 1 to 4, and even being able to transfer Pokemon from Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or Diamond and Pearl from just other DS Pokemon games, in other words, that came before it. Which I think is a really nice prize for beating the game, and probably the best prize for beating any Pokemon game, compared to what other games will do both before and later Pokemon games. But alright, slightly off topic here. Back to Black and White 2. This game does so much more than Pokemon Black and White does. As I mentioned in the Heart Gold Soul Silver segment, this game has the most post-game of any Pokemon game, I'd say. And has my favorite battle facility, that being the PW2, where you have gym leaders from all previous regions, and that including the Gen 5 gym leaders, and with the exception of Koga, because he's an Elite 4 member. So you have all those gym leaders from Gen 1 all the way up to 4 being able to battle them. And I remember back in the 5th grade, I used to do triple battles all the time. I think there were times I did some single and double battles, but I mostly did triple battles because I found those the most fun at the time. I think I remember having a team of Poliwrath I got off the GTS. Yeah, it was kind of weak, and I remember teaching it Psychic for some reason. I don't know. Oh yeah, the gem items were also really cool too. I kind of miss those, because Gen 6 onwards, we only have the normal gem, and they were nerfed in this generation too. Like, we might as well bring back the gem someday. I really hope they do bring those back. In their nerfed state, yeah, only boosting the power of specific moves by 30% rather than 50%. Because I guess I thought it was too broken. Part of that being Latios with Draco Meteor. But yeah. Thanks, Latios, you ruined it for all of us. Not just that too, like, Acrobatics and Flying Gem Archeops was really broken as well. But other than that, not only that, the battle subway is okay, I guess. It's a bit of an underwhelming battle facility. I remember grinding that in the original Black and White all the time back in elementary school too, and getting a cell battery, and then disappointed that the cell battery is one use. So that was great. Wasted that item in a lot of hours of my life, but whatever. Again, stuff I'm glad they changed in later games. But back to the BWT, and totally I'm not only gushing over this because Best Girl Jasmine is also in there too with her Heart Gold Soul Silver design. I will not shut up about that. But not just her, but a lot of other of my old favorite gym leaders. Like, you got Flannery, you got Morty, you got what am I calling it? You got Misty, you got Erica, you got Blaine, you got Chucky Boy, you got Watson, like all that stuff. Gardenia, Candace, Byron, just any of the gym leaders from Gen 1 to 4, except Koga, because he's an Elite 4 member, which, that's one weak point that that battle facility has, in my opinion, is that there's no Elite 4 members. I remember there was a separate mode where you could fight champions too. You could fight Red, you could fight Blue, and Blue counts as a gym leader in this game. You can fight Steven. You can't fight Wallace, though, but you can fight Juan in his place. Again, as a gym leader, you can fight Cynthia, fight Alder. Though Iris doesn't show up there either. Would have been cool if she did, but whatever. Honestly, one of my all-time favorite battle facilities. And the different modes you could have, too. Whether it's the World Champion thing with the different champions. The Legendary one, I remember, where Morty would have a... Not a Giratina. No, I don't think he'd have a Legendary. Like, Sabrina would have a Mewtwo. Or Fantino would have a Giratina. Striker down, whatever. Faulkner, I remember, would have a Lugia. Someone had a Rayquaza, I forgot who. I think it was Winona. Yeah. So and this was also kind of my first exposure to most Hoenn characters as well, because this is before I played a Hoenn game, and we'll get to that later on. But besides that, the amount of post-game this game has, You got the amount of different new areas that weren't in the first game, like Burbank Complex, or that one added area in Castelia City, where you can get a bunch of hidden ability Pokemon, that hidden ability Eevee you can get. This is the game where hidden ability Pokemon are also more widespread, and later games will do that too. Since the original Black and White, you can only get hidden ability Pokemon via the Dream World, which, at the time of making this video, well, hasn't existed in like over 10 years now. That closed down back in 2014, but yeah. I believe at the time, Oris was the latest Pokemon game too, which is funny. Huh. And I think the Dream World is still in this game too. It's just not as big of a factor as it was in the first game. And this game is easily one of the most difficult Pokemon games too. More difficult than the original Black and White, I'd argue. But not as difficult as a certain later Pokemon game we'll talk about. Like, Iris is easily one of the hardest champions out there. Maybe not as difficult as, say, Leon or Cynthia. But she's still very difficult too, especially that Focus Sash, Haxorus, or Dragonite. Ooh boy, this is what I mean. You know what I always say? Never leave home without a priority move. That's one of the biggest examples of that. Like, do good damage to the Haxorus and then hit it with like an extreme speed or something, so you don't have to worry about the plus speed and plus attack. That will rip through your team if you're not careful. Heck, I remember trying to rush through this game back in elementary school with the team of Emboar. Again, I chose Typic again. The Zoroark you get from Driftvale City, and an Ampharos. I think I remember I had some other Pokemon team, like, weirdly enough, a Drifblim before I hated that Pokemon, I think. A Golurk and a Metagross, and those Pokemon were severely underleveled to the point where they couldn't even compete. So I was just, because I was just trying to rush through the game back then, in like late 2012, before winter break was over, so I just had a Emboar, my Ampharos, and my Zoroark, and eventually, after many different tries against Iris, I finally did beat her. So there was that. And then, like, if you just see all the Pokemon in the Unova Pokedex, you can go to the Nature Reserve and get yourself a free Shiny Haxorus, which is really cool. I believe this was the first Pokemon game to introduce a Shiny Charm and the Oval Charm as well, and a lot of later games will make it easier and easier to get. And we'll talk about those later on as well. Upgraded soundtrack. Well, this version of Team Plasma, I think I prefer their original version in Black and White. Team Plasma is pretty cool, though. Neat outfits, but I must only say that because the Team Plasma theme that I didn't bring up until now, and the first Black and White was way better than the Black and White 2 version. Not saying that one's bad, but I prefer this one. Cold storage was replaced with the PWT. Again, still my favorite battle facility. Being able to fight all those different gym leaders, the rental battles, all that, they're all really cool. Other than that, I don't really... Oh, and the Hidden Grottos as well. I remember looking for those all the time back in elementary school, too. And again, just like Heart Gold Soul Silver, you can catch a bunch of different legendary Pokemon here, too. You can catch Heatran, depending on your version, Latios or Latios. I had White, too, so I got Latios. The Reggies, I was never able to... Well, I only got Regirock and Regice. I remember that same friend of mine who lent me the copy of Pokemon Pearl I was talking about earlier. He used to have Black, too. But for some reason, he just was against me. Because I used to bring my DS and 3DS to elementary school all the time. Back in the 5th grade. And kind of sneakily playing it sometimes, too, like on the bus or something. This was many years ago, so who cares now, but... he used to bring his DS to school, too, with his copy of Black 2, but for some reason he never let me scan it. It was weird. So I could get Registeel, but my sister also had Black 2 at the time. So... And I tried to help her beat the game up to, like, the 8th gym. She was able to beat Marlin, though she was stuck at the part where you're on Team Plasma's ship, because I didn't know it was different between versions on Team Plasma's frigate, or whatever the hell it's called. And you're supposed to get a different password or something, so she was kind of stuck on it, and lo and behold, I was never able to get Registeel, and by extension, Regigigas. I remember this cruel trick my little sister played on me, because at the time I was hunting for legendary Pokemon, or I was hunting for the legendary Keldeo, and we'll talk about that in a second. And she was all, hey, I saw Keldeo at Twist Mountain or whatever, so I went scouring Twist Mountain and actually found Regigigas instead. And I remember my older brother's like, really, you kind of led him to something he kind of wanted, but not exactly. But speaking of Keldeo, I remember this one day we had a 3-hour delay because it was heavy snow for school. And so my older brother just let me and my little sister stay home. And thank the Lord that happened. I believe it was a Monday, too. Because I was able to play Black and White 2 that day. I remember looking up the mystery gift and getting the Keldeo event because of it. So, thankfully I was able to stay home that day, because had that not happened, I probably wouldn't have that Keldeo. Heck, I still had that Keldeo on my copy of Alpha Sapphire. Along with that, I remember the Joint Avenue. Oh yes, basically being able to own your own business in a Pokemon game is so cool. I don't think later Pokemon games do this. But Joint Avenue, being able to run your own facilities for EV training, which I used to use all the time, for berry farming, for friendship growing. I can't really remember most of the other ones. I think buying certain rare items too. It was all really cool. And I remember naming it Keldeo, just Keldeo Avenue or something, because it allows you to give a name, and at the time I was kind of obsessed with Keldeo, since at the time, back in 2012, I remember the Keldeo and Kira movie had come out at the time. So I was kind of obsessed with Keldeo after watching that movie. I know it's not people's favorite Pokemon movies, but nostalgia-wise, I think it was okay. And going on about the big star of the show here, Kyurem. Oh yes, definitely one of my favorite legendary Pokemon to use. I prefer Black Kyurem, I'd say, of the two, because I remember having White Kyurem, and I thought it was a little underwhelming, but then again, I used to EV train my Kyurem in attack, and I didn't even notice, because again, it was before I really knew how EV training worked at the time. Again, using Joint Avenue. And I had Fly on it for some reason. Again, I was like 10, 11 years old at the time. Cut me some slack. I wasn't the most into Pokemon, like, how to make a decent moveset or whatever at the time. But, I got bored of how White Kyurem was playing, so instead I took the Reshiram I had out of it. I transferred a Zekrom from my copy of Pokemon Black that I had. I think it was the old event Zekrom, too. That's another thing. Black and White had a lot of events. I remember that old Mewtwo event as well. I don't have that Mewtwo anymore, sadly, but still. And then, okay, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering a lot here. So then I transferred the Zekrom over. I used Black Kyurem instead, and honestly I liked it way more. It hit harder because, again, all the training I put into it had also had loyal nature, so it raised its attack and lowered its defense. And it was just a lot better in my opinion. That's where I ended up liking Black Kyurem more. And I think I prefer its design over White Kyurem's design, but both of them are really cool designers. A lot of people say they're over-designed, and I think that's the point. They're fusions. They're supposed to be over-designed. And the original Kyurem's supposed to look kind of unfinished, because it's an incomplete Pokemon. It's supposed to be that way. And someday, I believe, we'll see the original dragon. But in other words, Black and White 2, I've gushed on long enough about this, just like Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Easily one of my all-time favorite Pokemon games. Now, Pokemon X and Y, look, I've stated it before on this channel, I'm not the biggest fan of this game, but Pokemon X and Y, I think, of any Pokemon game, suffers the most from new toy syndrome, in my opinion. And I'm going to point that out right here. I'm putting it, I don't hate it enough to put in F tier, because, hey, it is the game that introduced Mega Evolution, but it's so underwhelming. Like, again, as I stated before, new toy syndrome, everybody loved it when it first came out. I loved it when it first came out, but as time went on and the novelty kind of wore off on it, I started noticing the cracks in it. It's like, it was cool when it first came out, but easily one of the easiest Pokemon games ever. Most trainers, aside from, like, the Elite Four and Diantha, have, like, 3 Pokemon or less, which is underwhelming as all hell. The region design it's okay. It's far from the worst region design, I'd say. The new Pokemon introduced, while cool, like, you got your Aegislash, you got your Noivern, you got your Sylveon, you got your Goodra. Yveltal, easily my favorite. Box Art Legendary, so I get some small points for that. What else? This game made... There's one big thing this game definitely did. Is that it made getting competitively viable Pokemon very easy. Well, maybe not easy. It's still decently time-consuming from my experience, but it definitely was a lot easier to get into competitive Pokemon starting with this game. And every game since then has only made it easier and easier. And I've stated this before in previous videos, but I'll state it again here. That, thanks to how breeding works and getting IV Pokemon, most of which I got from the GTS, which, oh yeah, that's another plus this game gets, is the GTS system that it added in. Because of how Global Trade Station works now, like, it's unlike what the Gen 4 and Gen 5 games did, where you're only set to, like, 8 Pokemon, or 8 people who put it up for trade, and any other potential trades on there you just don't see. Now you can see every single possible trade that somebody's put on there, making it a lot easier to finish Pokedex. Heck, Pokemon X and Y was the first Pokemon game I ever finished a Pokedex in, getting all 721 available Pokemon at the time, which was really cool. And later Pokemon games I was able to do that too, like in Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, etc. Now, with that being said, I do like that this game also introduced Mega Evolution, and of course will later on introduce more of them. And like I said, the region design is alright too. A lot of the character design's very good. The soundtrack's far from my favorite Pokemon soundtrack, but it's okay, I guess. Besides, like, the Santaloon theme, the Champion theme against Diantha, those are the only noteworthy... Oh yeah, and one of the songs from the Super Training. Super Training's also one of my favorite activities to do, so... You know what? I said this was E tier, but I'm gonna bump Pokemon X and Y up to D tier, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna bump it up to D tier. Something else will take E tier's place, and if you know me, I think you know which game I'm talking about there. But, because just looking at it, yeah, there's a lot I can actually like about this game. Pokemon Me was pretty decent too, which will later be replaced by Pokemon Refresh. It had some neat mini games too, which I thought were cool. I used to spend a lot of time with back in the 6th grade. What else? The Battle Mason, far from the best battle facility, but me personally, nostalgia-wise, probably my my 4th favorite battle facility after the PWT, Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver's Battle Frontier, and the Gen 7 games Battle Tree. And that's what we'll talk about later on as well. Besides that, Xerneas is also pretty cool. Lysander and Team Flare are one of the lamest Pokemon villains, if not the lamest Pokemon villains we've ever had in the mainline games. Just their motivations, kind of like, they want to kill well, if you're playing Y, they want to kill everybody on the planet and make this world beautiful again. And then X, it's a little weird. They want to make everybody immortal or some garbage. It's so weird. Too bad. Their designs are okay, I guess, in Lysander, but the fact that they made Lysander out like he was a good guy originally, but you can tell just from his design that he's very, very obviously the leader of Team Flare, or at least have some sort of affiliation with them. Same with Malva, who was later on an Elite Four member for whatever weird reason, despite being part of a criminal organization. Just, why? Whatever. Like, I don't know how they gave her that position despite that. But going back to the competitive Pokemon thing, this is the first game to make getting into competitive Pokemon actually doable, because pre-Gen 6, look, you're all going to probably hate me for saying this, but I don't blame, like, pre-Gen 6, I honestly don't blame people for hacking or genning in their Pokemon. Pre-Gen 6, it was borderline impossible to get competitive Pokemon. No IV Judge, this was the first game to have the IV Judge. There was no way to easily breed over IVs, and even if you could breed over IVs in an easier way, again, no IV Judge, so you can't frickin' tell. Getting competitive items, well, in Black and White 2 is easier. That's another small thing I like about Black and White 2, is that competitive items like the Choice Band and Choice Scarf are half price, at 24 BP instead of 48 BP, so you don't have to grind nearly as long for them, or if you want a Life Orb, only 16 BP instead of 32. Weirdly enough, later Pokemon games up until Sword and Shield won't bring that back again. Then Scarlet and Violet just straight up say, hey, you can just buy these now. But slightly off topic. In X and Y, though, you still gotta grind 48 BP for the choiced items, or 32 for Life Orbs if you wanted. Actually, no, I think Life Orbs also 48 BP. Though later Gen 6 Pokemon game will make certain items a little bit easier, but I'll get to that later. But, there was no way to change natures, there was no way to... I mean, you could transfer natures via breeding, but back then it was only a 50% chance even if you used an Everstone. Say you wanted, I don't know, you were breeding a Machop with a Ditto, and you wanted the Machop with Adamant Nature. Say the Machop that you're breeding with has Adamant Nature, and you give it the Everstone. There's only a 50% chance that you could do that back then. X and Y was the first game to make it an 100% chance. And now if you wanted certain IVs, you could use the Destiny Knot to make it easier, because before that, you were pretty much stuck using the Power Brace or the Power Weight, which, guess what? Outside of Black and White 2, you have to grind 16 BP for in order to get in, and depending on which game you're playing, it's going to take a bit longer than usual to get that. At least in Black and White 2, it's only 8 BP, so it's a bit easier, but still. And I remember grinding to get those items back in Heart Gold Soul Silver. I think I only got, like, the Power Bracer and the one that raises attack and the one that raises defense. And I think the one that raises speed, too. Other than that, I wasn't able to get the other ones. And I remember using that, too, actually. I remember going back to Heart Gold Soul Silver for a split second. I remember raising my Ninjask's, like, attack by, like, 13 points on the level up screen, which was really cool. But then Gen 6 changed how those items work, where instead, as you get the EVs, your Pokemon stats will rise. And the higher level the Pokemon is, the more noticeable the stat rises. So you're not going to notice it as well as level 1, but say they're level 100 and you're raising those EVs, you'll definitely notice the stat changes a bit more. Which is pretty neat. But then, and then if we get into legendary Pokemon, which that didn't become easier until Gen 8, I'd say. Don't even get me started on trying to get a competitively viable legendary Pokemon without, like, RNG manipulation or some shit. Good luck freaking resetting, and it's gonna take a hell of a lot of resets. I guarantee you'll find a shiny Pokemon before, like, find a shiny legendary, assuming it's not shiny locked, before you'll even get it to be competitively viable for competitive play. And if you want to get through battle facilities, like the Battle Mason or the Battle Subway or whatever, you need competitively viable Pokemon in order to beat those things. And not just competitively viable Pokemon. You also need well-sound strategies to beat that stuff, too. Just saying. Like certain spread moves, like Earthquake on a Garchomp, for example, and your partner's a flying type or something. Something like that. Strategies like that. So, again, I honestly don't blame people pre-Gen 6 for hacking / genning in their Pokemon. And even in Gen 6, I don't blame people for genning their Pokemon. Because even then, competitive breeding. I used to do competitive breeding all the time back in middle school. Like, I have so many, in my old copy of Oris, I remember I used to competitively breed an X and Y and then turn them over to Oris. Like, I have a 6IV Ambipom that I remember breeding, and that was probably my first 6IV Pokemon, because I remember I had the 6IV Blaziken I got off the GTS. That was also shiny, by the way, that I still have. So that was really neat as well. And I was able to breed a lot of Pokemon in the field egg group, too, Ambipom being one of them. I remember breeding, like, Infernape, but then it didn't really have IVs, because I didn't fully understand how IVs worked at the time, up until about a few months later. And then I was finally able to get a 6IV Ditto at some point, and I pretty much could breed any Gen 6 Pokemon I wanted, or just any Pokemon period that I wanted, regardless of their group, which was really cool. After I got the egg moves on the natures I wanted. And another thing, pre-Gen 6, Gen 6 was the first generation where you could have multiple egg moves at once. In Gen 5 and before, I think you were only limited to like 1 or 2 egg moves or whatever, and if you had more than that, it was impossible. Like, you could only have 1 egg move at a time or some garbage on a Pokemon, so you couldn't have both. Gen 6 changed that. So let's say on my Infernape, I wanted Thunder Punch and Fake Out, which are both egg moves for it. In pre-Gen 6, you were stuck with just Thunder Punch or Fake Out. You couldn't have both. However, in Gen 6, you could have both, provided that one of the parents knew one of those moves from their respective egg group. That being the human-like egg group, I believe. And because it's a starter Pokemon, you're going to have a bad time trying to get a female Infernape, you know? Since it's only a 12.5% chance. Some say it's even lower, but whatever. So, I used to do a bunch of competitive breeding back then. It was some Pokemon it was more time consuming than others. Getting the EVs I wanted, or not the EVs, the IVs I wanted, and I had to go to the IV judge, in Cloud City all the time, all that stuff. But past the competitive breeding, another thing that this game is, X and Y, and honestly every Pokemon game since then, along with the Gen 4 games even, specifically Diamond and Pearl, I don't think the Gen 5 games or Heart Soul Silver were all that rushed. But Diamond and Pearl and every Pokemon game pretty much from Gen 6 all the way up to Generation 9 has been rushed in some way. Like the horde difficulty curve of X and Y, with how easy that game is. Then, like, outside of Mega Evolutions, it only introduces, like, 72 new Pokemon, 3 of which weren't even available at the start of the game, Diancie, Hoopa, and Volcanion. Ultimate Latios and Ultimate Latios, Mega Latios, are in the game's code, but you can't obtain them at all until Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So, yeah, that's another sign the game's been rushed. Southern Kalos was supposed to be in the game, but in the final game, we just got Cloud City, which is kind of underwhelming. Like, I feel like if this game had more time, and every Pokemon game since then had more time, like, these games would have had much more in it. We would have had maybe 10 or 20 more Pokemon or whatever, instead of just being stuck with 72, not counting Megas. And most of which, some Megas actually being added in Aurus. Just, there's a lot this game kind of does wrong. And if it just had more time in the oven, there would have been way more. Like, Volcanion was originally going to be found in Route 13's Power Plant, a lot of people theorize, because there's lava up there, but no. Diancie has a spot where you can counter it in Reflection Cave, but since that event never happened, you don't get Diancie until just before Aurus came out. I remember that event. What else? Hoopa, I think that I remember there's an NPC mentioning Hoopa's, like, prison bottle, but you can't get that until Aurus. It's just a lot of dumb shit that goes on in this game. One other thing I will point out is I like a lot of character designs in this game as well. Like, you got Viola's design, you got Dianthe's design, it's pretty neat. You got Seabold, you got Wickstrom. Callum's design is alright. Serena design, though, probably one of my favorite Poké Girls, personally. Shauna's design's pretty cool. Like, a lot of really good character designs in this game. And Tierrano's kind of funny. He also wears a Vanillite shirt, so that's cool. Yeah, all that stuff. So, I think with that being said, X and Y, now that I said it out loud, initially I was going to put in E tier, but low D tier I think is a better placement for it. Now, Aurus, I'm going to put this game in A tier. Probably my favorite of the generation. Actually, of the 3DS games. My second favorite of the 3DS games. And we'll get into the other one later on. Not the most popular opinion for the one I will say, but yeah. Alright, so Aurus, definitely a step up from the original Ruby and Sapphire, though I played this before playing the original Pokemon Sapphire back in my freshman year of high school, before Pokemon Sun and Moon came out. And I like the thing, I mean, again, it kind of suffers from the same difficulty issue that X and Y had. Oh yeah, getting Mega Evolution as early as the 3rd gym, and X and Y as early as the 5th gym in Aurus is kinda busted. I feel like you should get Mega Evolution later on. Heck, the Gen 7 games will straight up, you can't get Mega Evolution until the post-game in those. Aside from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, of course. But, I like the new Primal forms. Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre are based as all hell. All the new Megas, almost all the new Megas they introduced in this game are really cool, though some of which you need to transfer Pokemon in order to do, like, Ultimate Beedrill and Ultimate Pidgeot, for example, in order to use them, since you can't normally obtain them in said game. Which is kind of weird game design, but whatevs. And Pokemon does that a lot. Game Freak, they love doing dumb shit like that. The Battle Mason, definitely my 4th favorite battle facility, but the Battle Mason theme that when you fight one of the Battle Chateau lanes is a remix of the Pokemon Emerald Battle Frontier boss theme, which is, in my opinion, one of the best remixes to a song that Game Freak has ever made for a Pokemon game. It's so good. I love that song. I've listened to that song so many times back in the 7th grade. Great times. There's also another time the 3DS version of Super Smash Bros. 4 came out, too. So I remember playing those two games all the time back then. Along with all the breeding I used to do in Pokemon X and Y. And then transfer them over to Aurus. I still have a lot of those competitively viable Pokemon there. I still have my old Keldeo that I mentioned earlier in the Black White 2 segment. I still have the old movie Victini as well. That came out, the Victini with Fusion Flare, Fusion Bolt, and V-Create, which is really cool. I'm not transferring those over to the Switch games. They're staying where they are. They're staying in their home, thank you. Well, technically not their main home, but I'm keeping them in my old copy of 3DS, just in case anyone tries to suggest it. There's your answer, in case you do. But slightly off topic there. The revamping of Hoenn is really cool. The Dex Nav. Remember what I said earlier, where certain competitive items are kind of hard to get, since you have to grind for most of them? Well, items like the Life Orb, if you have a high enough level for Pokemon like Absol, you could use a Pokemon with Thief to steal the Life Orb from, which is a really nice change, so you don't have to grind for certain items. You want a Life Orb on your Pokemon? Well, there you go. So it makes building competitive teams just a tiny bit easier. I kind of hope they bring back Dexnav in a future game. It also makes shiny hunting for Pokemon easier, though I never personally found a shiny Pokemon in Dexnav myself. The secret bases I thought were alright, though. They could have had a little more to them. Like, I like the sheer variety of places you can go for them, but there's supposed to be a secret base, which I thought at the time meant it was supposed to be hard to find. And some new areas were added into this game that weren't in the original Ruby and Sapphire, so people can make more secret bases, which I think is pretty neat. And I like the fact that you can, like, through Street Pass, back when was Street Pass still open at the time we make it? Yeah, no, I don't think it's open anymore at the time we making this video. But, if you beat other people you see on Street Pass in their secret bases, you can recruit them for your own secret base. And yeah, a lot of people just had some, like, little Timmy Pokemon, like a bunch of Kyogres and Groudons and stuff. I mean, it's their Pokemon. If they want to use them, they can. Go ahead. But I remember recruiting those for my old gym as well, and I would be the main leader of said gym. Of course, it was probably the closest thing to owning your own Pokemon gym in a Pokemon game, which I thought was pretty cool, as a secret base. What else? The soundtrack, oh yeah, one of the best Pokemon soundtracks as well. The battle theme, like the original Ruby and Sapphire battle theme was already really good, but the remix for it here is very good as well. Just like Heart Gold, Soul Silver, the redesigns for a lot of the characters, like Flannery or Phoebe or Watson, those are all really cool. Brendan and May's redesigns, though I think I still prefer Brendan and May's original Ruby and Sapphire design. Just out of nostalgia, I think, because of the anime mostly. For May specifically, I prefer that a bit more, I'd say. But the redesigns are really neat, too. Same for the redesigns for Archie or Maxie. Those are really good redesigns over how kind of cursed they looked in the original. I'll be real, especially Maxie. He looked weird in that. Like I mentioned in some of my previous tier lists, Primal Groudon, Primal Kyogre are metal as all hell, especially how Groudon kind of has lava flowing through its body, which is metal as all hell. Almost like its blood is made out of lava, which, God, that's so cool. Ultimate Rayquaza is also really neat, and the little side story there with the Delta episode, which is clearly a reference to Pokemon Emerald in some ways, and the Sky Pillar, and Wallace fighting you with his... Well, I don't really like Wallace's redesign. His redesign kind of sucks in my opinion. The one redesign I think I dislike. But his boss fight before Spear Pillar... Did I say Spear Pillar? Sky Pillar is a redesign... is literally just his champion team in Pokemon Emerald, which is pretty cool. The Deoxys fight, which I remember back when I was in the 7th grade, I remember being the Delta episode. I had like my Mega Metagross at the time, I believe, though I couldn't use it because the Rayquaza was already Mega Evolved at that point, and it was a level 80 Deoxys against a level 70 Rayquaza, I believe, Mega Rayquaza. And I ended up killing the thing with like extreme speed just out of fear because I didn't want to accidentally get defeated by it because it was such a high level and it's Deoxys. Deoxys has pretty damn good stats. In its normal form, of course. High offenses, high speed, and whatever. So then what I did, which I didn't know this at the time, I remember being the Elite Four for fun or whatever. And I think I was at my dad's house at this time as well. And then because of that, I went back to Sky Pillar, and I was able to battle Deoxys again, and be more prepared. So I'm glad the developers put that in there. And I think Pokemon games since Gen 4 have been able to do that, I think, where if you accidentally beat the legendary Pokemon, you can just beat the Elite Four and they'll respawn. And later games, I think, will do something like that as well, if I remember correctly. But Horse is also another one of those games where you can catch a hell of a lot of legendary Pokemon, so I remember spending a lot of time doing that. I had to look it up on Cerebi for the most part to do it. Like getting Thundurus, Landorus, Tornadus, the Creation Trio, the Lake Trio, the Legendary Beasts, except for the birds, but because they were available on X and Y is likely why they weren't in this game. The Regis, as well as Regigigas, that's a little different how it was in the original. Latios and Latios, only unlike the original, depending on your version, I had Alpha Sapphire. So, and for X and Y I had Y. So I ended up getting Latios, I believe. And then because of Street Pass, I got a Latios. I think you could get 2 Latioses as well, if I remember correctly, thankfully, because of Street Pass, which I think was a reference to the old Eon ticket or whatever from the originals. Whatever. What else could I say about this game? I mean, it's a pretty good game. Definitely, probably my second favorite remake of any of the Pokemon remakes. Obviously, first being Heart Gold, Soul Silver. I love that game. Elite Four is real neat. The new Megas they added, like Mega Salamence and Mega Metagross, you all know how much I love those two. I like the different hidden islands you can go to after you beat the game, too. Malville City's facelift was always really cool, too. Just a lot to like about this game, though I wish it was a bit more difficult, but otherwise, and the redesigns are cool, too. So, I'll put that in A tier, like high A tier. Pokemon Sun and Moon. I'll put this lower A tier. I like this game quite a bit, actually. Not as much as its enhancement later on, but I remember this came out when I was in my freshman year of high school, and I like the new things that they added. Like, this is the first mainline Pokemon game to get rid of HMs and replace them with the Ride Pager. Though you're kind of using other people's Pokemon, which is a little bit I guess. But whatever, I had Pokemon Moon, because I still prefer Lunala over Solgaleo, personally. This also has one of my favorite soundtracks of any Pokemon game, like the Elite Four theme. Easily probably my favorite Elite Four theme, along with Oris's remix of the Elite Four theme and Black and White's Elite Four theme. Those are really good. The Battle Tree, easily one of my favorite battle facilities, though I don't think I was able... I remember in this game specifically, I beat the multi-battle one, the normal one. Same with normal single and normal doubles, but I was never able to beat super multi-battle. I remember I was paired with Wally, I believe. And for super single, I managed to get up to like round 30 and having like round 30, around round 30, and I never got up there since. But, so I was able to recruit Wally, and I believe he had his Mega Gallade and a Scarfed Garchomp, which is where I got the idea of a Scarfed Garchomp in later games. And I remember using that in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. We'll get to that in a bit. And I remember I only got up to round 40. I think I was battling Mallow, if I remember correctly. You know, the grass-type member. And she had a Talonflame or something. Either her or the NPC she was playing with had a Talonflame. And the blasted thing had Focus Sash. And I remember I was using a Mega Metagross. I remember trying to use Rock Slide, but the Rock Slide freaking missed. So that really angered the hell out of me. So I got 2 Swords Dances off because of that. And I ended up losing the match because of that. Which I was so angry that day. And I haven't really done that multi-battle since. But I'll end up later doing an Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, which again, we'll get to that later on. This is the game that introduced the Ultra Beasts as well. So, like, they're always really cool, though some other Ultra Beasts will be introduced later on. And I hope we do get, like, if we ever get, like, a Legends of Alola game or something, I really hope we get a new Ultra Beast soon, because that would be really nice. I already mentioned the soundtrack. I like how this game changed, like, this is the first Pokemon game along with its enhancement to not have gym leaders. And these are the only Pokemon games to not have said gym leaders. Besides Legends Arceus. Of course, that's a little different. Because I thought that was a nice change of pace. It's kind of like, y'all gonna hate me for saying this, but it's like in Mario Party 9, where instead of everybody moving on the separate parts of the board, it was replaced with the car. And honestly, I thought that was a decent change of pace at the time. It's the same case here with the trial captains. I really like what they were trying to do with that and the Kahunas as well, which the Kahunas are kind of like Elite Four members in a bit of a different way. The Z Crystals, honestly, of the 4 big Pokemon gimmicks, probably easily my least favorite one. Since it's just one big super move and that's that, and if you don't use it correctly, or if you use it into a Pokemon that was immune to the move, like say you use Tectonic Rage on a flying type, well, there you go. There goes your gimmick. You get overly punished for that. Which other gimmicks you won't get nearly as punished for making mistakes like that. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but Mega Evolution is usually my favorite gimmick, which is why I put XMI a bit higher and Auror's pretty high. But Sun and Moon also brings back Mega Evolution as well, as I mentioned before with Metagross, and it was really cool. New characters, like Lana or Mallow, or Hala or Olivia, all really neat designs. How, far from the worst rival, but he's far from the best rival too. I mean, he's okay. Gladion, probably one of my favorite rivals. I like him. Lou's a cool character. Luzmine's a crazy woman. And we'll talk about how she was changed later on as well. The Necrozma being kind of a special Pokemon you get at 10-Card Hill in the post-game. And he's kind of has a lot of mystery around him. Kind of like Kyurem back in Black and White. And when you catch him in Giant Chasm. The different islands, also based on one of my favorite places in the entire world, Hawaii. Definitely should go there someday if you haven't already. Well, I haven't gone there myself yet at the time of making this video, but someday I will. This I promise. This I vow. What else can I say I don't like that I mean, this is the first game to introduce regional forms as well. This is the first game to kind of not really have a Victory Road. I mean, Mount Lockheed is kind of a Victory Road, but it doesn't really have any trainers on it. It's weird. And besides that, what else could I say that I like about this game? This is a good game, and I like how after you become the champion of Alola, the very first Alolan champion, like, you have to do a little title defense against a bunch of different NPCs. It could be Hau, could be some random youngster Joey, could be Kukui, could be Galarian. Like, a wide assortment of trainers could show up. Ryuki, which we won't know too much about him until later game. All of that. So, there's a lot to like about this game. Definitely one of my favorite Pokemon. Well, maybe not one of my favorite Pokemon games, as you can see by this tier list, but it's definitely up there. It's definitely better than X and Y, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. Now, onward to Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. Probably my third favorite. Probably my third favorite Pokemon game. Definitely my third favorite. Y'all are probably going to hate me for this, but then again, it's my opinion. It is just an enhancement of Sun and Moon, which does get some slight minus points for that, especially back in 2017 when it was marketed as basically a new Pokemon game. When, let's be real, no it isn't. Like 75-80% of the game is just the same as the first game a year prior, which definitely gets some minus points for that. But I love all the new content they added in this game. Not only the new story with Necrozma and Ultra Necrozma being one of the hardest things, the hardest Pokemon boss fights in a game if you don't know it's coming. If you know it's coming, you can definitely prepare for it. But if you don't know it's coming, and let's be real, back in 2017, a lot of us didn't know this was coming. So, it definitely made things very surprising when we did see it. And, Duskmane, Necrozma, Dawnwings, Necrozma are all really cool. Unlike Kyurem later on with Calyrex, in its little fusion state, you can actually have both Duskmane and Dawnwings Necrozma on your team. Where in Black and White, too, you can't have both Kyurem forms on the team simultaneously, and you can't have both Calyrex forms on the team simultaneously in the Sword and Shield DLC. We'll talk about that one later on. The battle tree, this is the one, unlike in the first Sun and Moon, I was actually able to do Super Single Battle, Super Double, and Super Multi. I beat all three of those. And I still have those videos saved on my 3DS too, actually. So one of these days, I should probably put that on the channel. But it's going to be quite some time before that happens. Anyways, slightly off topic. The new Z moves added are pretty neat. The new areas, oh yeah, and back to how Pokemon games were kind of rushed. Sun and Moon seemed a little rushed too. Like a lot of unused areas. And even in Ultra and Ultra Moon still go unused. Just a small gist of that. I really like the Mantine surfing, which was an easy way to grind BP. That's how I used to grind BP, to get competitive items, to get Mega Stones, and to get tutor moves, which this game also brings back the move tutor moves as well. Other character designs still really cool, especially a lot of NPC designs. Again, based on Hawaii, one of my favorite places that I still want to visit someday in the world. Sort of other things to like about this game, like the Ultra Warp Ride, I believe it was called, where you ride on Sagillo Lunala, depending on your version, which is still really cool. Just don't play it in gyro controls. You're gonna hate it if you play it in gyro controls. Just play it in normal controls, that's all. If it were like a Wii game, I could see it getting a little more use, but this isn't a Wii game. And gyro controls suck ass on the 3DS. But I remember being able to shiny... I remember shiny hunting so many different legendaries. I got shiny Regigigas from this, shiny Registeel. I think did I get a shiny? No, I got a shiny Zapdos from this. Shiny Azelf, I remember I was trying shiny hunt, but I never got it. I think I got a shiny Regirock from here as well. Shiny Articuno I remember getting. I got a shiny Cobalion. I remember, like, back in high school, I used to do a lot of exercises. Like, I used to, like, do planks, and I would do a plank while I'm shiny hunting the Pokemon. I remember getting the shiny Cobalion while I was doing a plank, too, which was funny. So I ended up closing my 3DS, finishing my little plank, and then catching the shiny Cobalion, which was pretty cool. I never got a shiny Virizion or shiny Terrakion, but this was also, along with the first Sun and Moon, was around the time I first got into watching Poketubers and whatever, and them doing shiny hunting and Ultra and Ultra Moon all the time as well, you know, like HGV and whatever. I remember him doing that all the time, too, which is part of the reason it inspired me to make this channel, too, so shoutouts to those guys. And that also was what inspired me to do shiny hunting back then in Ultra and Ultra Moon. And I had Ultra Moon. The Mantine surfing, honestly, one of my favorite side modes in any Pokemon game to grind VP for. The Pokepelago, I forgot to bring this up for the first Sun and Moon. Honestly, a bit of a step down from the Super Training in the Gen 6 games, in my opinion. But at least it's a way you can EV train your Pokemon passively, you know? And if I ever do get to play Gen 7 games again, what I want to do is EV train like some Pokemon on my main team actively while having Pokemon in my Pokepelago and EV training them passively. Something like that. Which would be pretty cool. And then Elio and Celine's design are two playable characters for this generation. The Sun and Moon designs, I think I prefer those over their Ultra and Ultra Moon designs. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon designs are fine though, too. But I think I prefer their original Sun and Moon designs. And the character customization, one thing X and Y does well, too. Being the first mainline Pokemon game, not the first Pokemon game to do trainer customization, that would be Battle Revolution. And I always liked a lot of different customizations, too. I always chose the female character and whatever. So, both male and female characters, I think, have good trainer customization as well. I like how the battle tree, and I should have brought this up in the Sun and Moon segment as well, brings back a lot of old characters like Wally or Cynthia, which is always really cool. Dexio and Cena show up in this game, which I'll be dead honest. Back when Sun and Moon was first coming out, I completely forgot these guys were even in X and Y, because one, it had been so long since I played X and Y story, and two, that's just a testament to how kind of forgettable most aspects of X and Y are. That Sun and Moon, I remember them more in this game than in X and Y, which is kind of funny. But Ultra and Ultra Moon is literally just an enhanced version, so it's definitely minus points for that. It introduces new Ultra Beast Blacephalon, Naganadel, Poipole, and Stack Attack being my favorite Ultra Beast. But for some reason it didn't introduce any new Alolan forms, which was weird. Why? Why didn't they introduce new Alolan forms? And the Zygarde cells that were in their first Sun and Moon were replaced with the totem stickers. Yeah, Paper Mario sticker star in my Pokemon game. That's what everybody totally wanted. All of that, but what other aspects can I think of? Melon Kilo was changed to having trainers in it, so it feels more like a Victory Road now, unlike the first Sun and Moon. Ultra and Ultra Moon are also probably the hardest Pokemon games in my opinion. Not just the Ultra Necrozma fight, but a lot of Pokemon like have more competitive based movesets. A lot of Pokemon that you'll fight now have more IVs, and some even are a little EV trained. Like I remember Plumeria's Salazzle that she has like near the end of the game, which only has 3 moves, but its 3 moves are really strong moves. Sludge Wave, I believe, either Sludge Bomb or Sludge Wave, Flamethrower, and Dragon Pulse. Which in the first Sun and Moon, she had dumb weak moves like Flame Burst and Double Slap or whatever. Kind of underwhelming moves for a Salazzle. But now she has like competitively based moves. Got a little coverage and her 2 very strong stab moves. Which, honestly, I kind of like it. Like, it was, like, Ultra and Ultra Moon are definitely pretty difficult games. I remember this one NPC you'll fight in the Pokemon Trainer School at the beginning of the game has a starter Pokemon that's strong against yours, so unless you've built up a bit of a team for that, you're gonna have a slight issue with that. What else? Other than that, and just like Black and White 2, the different areas they added are also pretty neat, too. And, yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of playing Ultra and Ultra Moon back in high school. Even after Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee came out, I played that game a lot until Sword and Shield came out. So a lot of nostalgic memories for that. So, Ultra and Ultra Moon, I put you in mid-S tier. Alright, the Pokemon game that started all red and bleh. So I had Pokemon Red. I never finished my old copy of Pokemon Red that's on my Virtual Console 3DS. I think I'll put it... I'll put a low B tier. Because, yeah, this game... Well, it's the first Pokemon game. You gotta cut it some slack. A lot of people say this game is basically made with duct tape and hopes and dreams, and, yeah, that shows a lot. It's definitely... It's not a full-on glitchy game to the point where just normally playing it causes glitches to show up. You kind of have to go out of your way to cause some glitches to show up. So it's not the most glitchy game ever. Which I think is fine. If you have to go out of your way to do most of the glitches that are in the game, then I think it's a decently polished game. At least that's what I think. Now, if you could find a bunch of glitches while just casually playing the game, yeah, then it's a glitchy game. But Red and Blue is where it started at all. The different character designs, even back then, were always really neat. All the 100... Well, not all of them, but most of the original 151 were pretty cool, I guess. See my Gen 1 tier list for more knowledge on that. My opinions on those. It was the game that set up everything with the gym leaders, and the Elite Four, and the champion, and the rival. Blue being the OG rival. Soundtrack is alright, I guess. Ultra Moon soundtrack was always really good, too. I forgot to bring that up. Like the Ultra Necrozma theme. Oh yeah, and the Battle Agency, and wherever that was added. Another one of my favorite battle facilities. Probably my 5th favorite battle facility. Just wanted to go back to that for a split second. Back to Red and Blue. Before it came out on Virtual Console back in 2016, though, I remember in 2015 I was in the 8th grade at the time. Again, Oris was the latest Pokemon game at the time. And back when I was still doing all that competitive breeding and whatever, and doing the Battle Maze in Oris, which I spent a lot of time on back then. Never did the Super Double Battle, though. I remember before Sun and Moon came out I was trying to do that, but yeah. Again, I'm getting sidetracked. I think I only ever got it to, like, the 2nd gym, because I remember on my old Chromebook that I got from my old middle school. I remember, because a friend of mine back then, who was also really into Pokemon, showed me a website to play Pokemon Red on, so I played it on there quite a lot. The only thing was I was never able really to get past... Well, I got past Misty, but I was never able to get past anything beyond that. Because every time I tried, we had to do some test on my, on our Chromebook or whatever that caused me to have to shut out of all my tabs or whatever. And this was before I knew the pin mechanic that computers have. This is before, like long before I knew about that. So I was kind of against doing that because once I did that, I lost my data and I could never restart it. But that was fine because I was able to get Pokemon Red for about $10 on Virtual Console that same year, that same school year. So that was all cool. Aside from that, some of the battles are okay. It's definitely a good step in the right direction for the franchise. And man, I mean, I wasn't alive at the time of the big Pokemon craze in like the 90s or whatever. I think my older siblings could definitely say a thing or two about that one. Or whatever that goes on. Like, if I was definitely old enough for that, I probably would bring that up here, but sadly that's not the case. Other than that, Red and Blue, really neat games. Soundtrack is alright. Like, a lot of the sprites are a little off, yes, that later games like Pokemon Yellow will fix, but still. So yeah, I'll put Pokemon Red in the B tier. Pokemon Yeller. Pokemon Yellow, I remember my older brother let me play back when I was in elementary school along with Pokemon Gold. Actually, wait. You know what I remember saying that Pokemon Heart Gold was my second Pokemon game? Actually, I think that's false. Pokemon Yellow, I think, was my second Pokemon game, actually, now that I remember. But you know what? Just in my head, let's say it was my third Pokemon game, because I'd rather keep Pokemon Yellow as my second Pokemon game. Or Pokemon Heart Gold, I mean, as my second Pokemon game. And let's just ignore what I just said. Yellow's my third Pokemon game, actually. I never got past Brock because, again, I was pretty new to Pokemon at the time. And prior to that, I was able to get done with most of Gold and Silver when I first played it. And we'll get to that in a second. But Pokemon Yellow, it's basically just Pokemon Red and Blue, but with enhancements in it. And it's based on the Pokemon anime, because at the time, hey, the Pokemon anime was super popular. So they decided to capitalize on that, which honestly, a good move on them. And they added some small things like Pikachu being your partner Pokemon while your rival had an Eevee. And depending on what battles you won, you'd get your rival to get Flareon, Jolteon, or Vaporeon. Jolteon was easily the best of the first three back then, battle-wise. But design-wise or whatever, concept-wise, Flareon's still my favorite. But that's not what we're talking about here. With that being said, Pokemon Yellow, I think I put probably high B tier. I do have a copy of Pokemon Yellow on my 3DS that I actually never played along with Pokemon Crystal, actually. But I was able to play a little bit of Pokemon Yellow. And it's pretty much the same as Red and Blue, just with some slight changes, and Jesse James and Meowth showing up as well, again as a reference to the anime, so we don't have to talk too much about Pokemon Yellow. Fun fact, if you transfer Pikachu to Red and Blue, and then evolve it, and then transfer it back to Pokemon Yellow, you won't be able to interact with it anymore, nor have it as a partner of Pokemon Follow Pokemon. Oh yeah, another thing Heart Gold Soul Silver did that was really neat, so even more points for that. Just want to go back to that. There's a lot to talk about these games. I'm bound to forget a few things. But then if you try to evolve Pikachu in game, just like Ash's Pikachu in the anime, it'll say it doesn't want to evolve, which is a really nice touch. But I'll put Pokemon Yellow in B tier. Pokemon Gold, I'm putting this in high S tier. You guys know me, if you know my channel well enough, Pokemon Gold was my first Pokemon game, thanks to my older brother, shoutouts to him. I remember playing his old copy of Pokemon Gold on the Game Boy Color that I actually still have. Not the copy itself, but the console, I mean. And that was my very first exposure to it. But then again, I was 7 years old when I first played Pokemon. I mean, I knew about Pokemon long before I played this, but I didn't get to play Pokemon until I was 7 years old, as I just mentioned. I never beat the Elite Four, actually. I think I remember my brother kind of trying to do it for me, but he kind of just, not gave up, but kind of stopped halfway through because he wanted me to do it myself, which understandable. Looking back, honestly, kind of understandable. It's better that I do it myself instead of somebody backseat driving, you know? But I was, I remember my team was Typhlosion, because, yeah, I chose Cynical, which I also did later on in Heart Gold Soul Silver. I had Typhlosion, a Pidgeot, I believe. The Weeping Bell, I told you, I never evolved, because, you know, horrid game design, you can't get the, evolutionary stones in this game until post-game, so that gets minus points for it. I never caught Ho-Oh either, which you could do before the Elite Four, which I didn't know about that at the time I was only 7 years old. But, I think I had a Dragonite. No, I trained up a Dragonite later on. I didn't have a Dragonite initially. And funnily enough, even after having my own Dragonite, I never battled the Elite Four ever again. If I did, that would have been even better, too. But never did, sadly. What else did I forgot what else I had on my team. There's some other stuff I had. I think I was training Eradicate one time, but never finished using it. Same with a Butterfree, whatever. So, and this in Pokemon Heart Gold kinda doesn't fix, is the weird level curve, since because of the post-game, the level curve is really low, and you're getting Pokemon by, level 30 or 40 or whatever. Before the, by the Elite Four, you're still fighting Pokemon in their level 30s and 40s, and then by the post-game, you're fighting Pokemon in their 20s and 30s. Janine especially, which I think the remake fixed. But, for some reason, if you fight Janine in Kanto in the post-game, her Pokemon are in their mid-30s, when everything up to that point is in, their mid to late 40s. Why? So you're gonna have an easy time with her. You're going to be over level for her no matter what, unless you go out of your way to train up a separate team just to battle her on fair terms, which is just so weird. Why? Whatever. Small things for that. I mentioned earlier there was originally going to be a Safari Zone in this game. That didn't happen. And a lot of other stuff. But Pokemon Gold, I have a lot of nostalgia for this game. I spent so much time playing this back in early elementary school, catching a bunch of different Pokemon, never really being able to beat the Elite Four, but I was able to do that later on in the remake anyways. So, we're going to put you a nice and high S tier. Also, good soundtrack, too. Pokemon Crystal. I remember I still have my older sister's old copy of Pokemon Crystal in my house. Too bad anytime I tried playing it, I think the farthest I got was beating the first gym, and I also have a copy of Pokemon Crystal on my 3DS that I never played, that I did buy. But I should probably go back to that one of these days, just for funsies. And you can even catch the Celebi event in that game, in the Virtual Console version. You couldn't do in the original Game Boy Color version. But yeah, the old copy that I do have that used to be my older sister's, yeah, it doesn't really work. The purpose being is, if you save the game, but then you turn it off for long enough, the game data will kind of erase itself. That's because I think the internal battery on it died or something. Something like that. I think that's what it is. If anybody knows, please let me know, but I think that's what it is. But Pokemon Crystal, as well as Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver adding Crystal content later on, which is, forgot to bring that up too. I think this was also the first Pokemon game to have a sort of battle facility too, its own battle tower. Not to confuse it with the Gen 4 battle tower or the Gen 8 battle tower. But I think this is the first Pokemon game to have a battle tower in it. So for that, with that being said, I will put you... And definitely not C tier. I think I'd put it at B tier. You know, I'll put it above Pokemon Yellow. I'll put it B tier. Because I definitely like the enhancements it had over Pokemon Gold, especially the animated sprites and whatnot. But Pokemon Gold had more Reap in it, which Crystal for some reason didn't. Oh yeah, that's another thing. The Gen 2 Pokemon games, which Heart Gold Soul Silver later fixed this. Why was there so many Pokemon in Johto that weren't available until the post-game? Like, seriously, think about it. Skarmory, Larvitar. Larvitar kind of makes sense, I guess, but still. Misdreavus. Houndour. Murkrow. There's some other ones I'm forgetting. Not Pineco. You can get Pineco pre-Elite 4. Same with Apom. There's some others I'm blanking on, but those are the main ones. And no wonder why people were confused about them being Kanto Pokemon, because, on them being Johto Pokemon, because they're found in friggin' Kanto. Like, the hell? It's so whatever, it's just weird game design decisions. And again, just like I mentioned in Gold Silver, can't get evolution stones until the post-game, because good game design, right? Game Freak, back then, I swear I was allergic to good game design, I'm telling you. But, besides that, I mean, Pokemon Crystal is a decent game. The first game to have battle facilities. The first Pokemon game to have a playable female character, which is pretty neat. And another thing, a lot of the gym leaders, and yes, that includes Best Girl Jasmine, definitely her second favorite, my second favorite of her designs, after her Heart Gold Soul Silver design, but a lot of the gym leaders in this game have really weird teams. Not counting the Kanto gym leaders, just the Johto ones here. For some reason, Faulkner uses a Pidgey and a really underleveled Pidgeotto at level 9? Why? You could get Spearow, you could get Natsu, which personally I think they should have given him a Natsu, even if you kind of couldn't catch that Pokemon at that point in the game. You could get Hoot at night. I know he specifically wants to use birds, but he could also have used a Zubat if he wants, which I think in later games like Black and White 2, he has a Crobat. Like, why did they only give him Pidgey and a Pidgeotto? And we'll still get Bugsy. He only has a Metapod, a Kakuna, and a Scyther. Scyther's a cool ace. I'll give him that, but why the fuck do you have Metapod and Kakuna? You could get Spinarak at that point in the game. Heracross is too strong for that point in the game. Same with Shuckle, so I see why he wouldn't use those. You can get, I know Ladybug, oh yeah, Ladybug's another one of those Pokemon that isn't available until post-game. That one baffles me the most, I think. He could have a Ladybug. He should have had a Ladybug and like a Spinarak, or maybe a really underleveled Ariados, instead of Kakuna and Metapod. Just why? I think Whitney's team is okay. I mean, I think she's not just normal types, but I think she specifically wants to use cute normal types. She could have used a Teddy Ursa. That's cute normal type. She could use Apom as well, which again, well, Teddy Ursa you don't get till late game in the main game of Johto. So maybe that's why she doesn't use the Teddy Ursa, but they could have changed that. But Apom, you can actually get at that point in the game, so why the motherfuck does she not use an Apom or a Teddy Ursa? I would have replaced her Clefairy with maybe Teddy Ursa instead. Morty is probably the worst example of this, along with Faulkner. He uses the entire Ghastly line. Okay, cool, because, I mean, it kind of made sense back then, because the Ghastly line and Misdreavus were the only ghost types, but why not replace one of his two Haunters with a Misdreavus? I feel like the only reason they didn't do that is because Misdreavus can only get in postgame. Then change it around. He could have used a Misdreavus to make his team at least a little more diversified. Like I said, back then I swear Game Freak was just allergic to making good game design decisions. They're not as allergic to it nowadays, but still, we'll talk about that stuff later. What else? Chuck, for some reason, only uses a Primeape and a Poliwrath. He could have used a Hitmontop, which I think the reason he doesn't use a Hitmontop is because Bruno later in the game will already use one, but still. He could have at least used a Heracross. At that point in the game, Heracross would be strong enough for I think Heracross is fine enough to fight against at that point in the game, especially since you'll have plenty of flying types you could potentially use against it. So he could have at least used a Heracross. Best Girl Jasmine. I see why she didn't have a Fortress, because Koga later will use one. But, in my opinion, what they should have done with her team, give her Skarmory, and replace one of her Magnemites with a Skarmory and evolve the other Magnemite. I think that would be good. Her Steelix, though, perfect. The perfect team member for the perfect girl. I'll just bring that up for a second. And then, Price is another bad example. I mean, he uses his Pulse One, which is his ace. Okay, cool. And funny how Price is the only male Johto gym leader that uses a Johto Pokemon, while all three of the female Johto gym leaders use Johto Pokemon as well, which is funny. That's another weird thing. But then his other two Pokemon are Seal and Dugong. Okay, Dugong I kind of understand, but why Seal? It's not even an ice type, for one. And for two, both Delibird and Sneasel, excuse me, exist, and you can, if you're playing Pokemon Silver, you can actually get Sneasel, excuse me, or not Sneasel, excuse me, and you can get Delibird in the Ice Path, which you can access after you beat Price, and after you beat like Team Rocket and all that garbage. So, also Team Rocket is also at their weakest tier since Giovanni isn't around, their main leader isn't around, one of the executives had to take over, which inherently makes Team Rocket a bit weaker, I'd say, since their main leader's around and therefore they're less organized, so that's another thing. And definitely probably the third weakest evil team, like specifically Johto's version of Team Rocket. Behind, actually fourth weakest, behind Team Aqua and Magma, because they're lame in my opinion. Team Yell and Team Flare, as I mentioned before with X and Y segment. And then Claire, she has 3 Dragonairs, actually 2 Dragonairs and a Gyarados. And then her Kingdra, which, just like Morty, it kind of makes sense why that's the case. So her team's at least better than Morty's, even though Claire's probably my least favorite female Pokemon character of all time. Funny how Johto has both the best Pokegirl and the worst Pokegirl, but yeah. But that's a discussion for another day. Aside from all that horrid bouncing, a lot of the areas in Pokemon Crystal and Gold and Heart Gold Soul Silver by extension as well, also really neat too, so I'll give them that too. Soundtrack's pretty good. I already mentioned a lot of the things they added that the original Gold and Silver didn't have. There's a lot to like about this game, I think. And a lot of decent ways to shiny on too if you choose to. So, Pokemon Crystal I'll put in high B tier. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. I remember playing Pokemon Sapphire back before Pokemon Sun Moon came out, because a friend of mine, shout out to him if he happens to be watching, gave me his old emulator of Pokemon Sapphire. Too bad I wasn't able to finish it back then, because my freaking high school at the time decided to block all emulators. Thank you, by the way. But, I managed to get up to Elite Four. I had a team of Salamence, a shiny Exploud. I remember getting a shiny Whismur in the middle of my graphic design class I was doing at the time, which was pretty cool. I was done with my assignments at the time, so I was allowed to play it. But I was also playing it behind my teacher's back. But still. So it's cool finding that shiny Whismur, because initially I think I was going to use either Aggron or Dusclops, but because I found that shiny, I was like, let me use shiny Exploud for the entire game. I chose Swampert. Salamence, a Gardevoir, I had a Breloom and a Camerupt. It's a pretty well-balanced team. The only type overlap, I'd say, and again, this is before fairy types existed, but the only type overlap is the 2 ground types with my Swampert and Camerupt. Hoenn kind of suffers from the same problem Sinnoh has, where there isn't that many good fire types, assuming you didn't choose the fire starter, which I didn't in this case. I mean, Camerupt's alright. Aside from its kind of lackluster typing, Camerupt's okay. Torkoal, and Torkoal was your only other option, which Torkoal's a little too slow, especially before Trick Room was a thing. So, your only real viable option, I say, was Camerupt, which, again, was pretty freaking slow. And had a decent offensive typing, but not the best defensively with that quad weakness to water. So, small thing on that. Hoenn has really good region design. In my opinion, probably one of the most diversified regions of all the regions in Pokemon. Both mainline and spin-off, for that matter. Soundtrack's good. A lot of the character designs are good, as I mentioned during the Oris segment. There's a lot to like about this. Secret bases aren't as fleshed out as they would be in the remake. The game is definitely far from one of the harder Pokemon games. It's definitely not that hard. It's a pretty decently easy game. What else is there to mention, really? Oh yeah, I forgot to mention in Oris' segment. Soaring on Latios, and Latios is probably one of the most surreal things in a Pokemon game. Let me just bring that up real fast. So, I think I'd put Ruby and Sapphire, because I remember playing this before Sun and Moon came out, like a good 2 or so months before that game came out. I think I'll put it in low A tier. I have a lot of nostalgia playing this back in high school, which was really cool. Though not as good as its later on remake, it does quite a lot right in my opinion. Though Team Aqua and Magma, as I stated before, are definitely one of the lamest evil teams. For starters, their intentions are just really stupid. One wants to expand the land for people, which in some ways I guess makes sense, but where's the motivation? Like, why do you want to do that so bad? Like, what backstory is there for why you want to do this, other than for human development, I guess? And Team Aqua is the opposite. They want to expand the seas for more sea-based Pokemon. How does that benefit you? I mean, first of all, Hoenn's already a pretty, water-related region. 7 out of 10, 7.8 out of 10, too much water, everybody. So like, there's already plenty of water there, and plenty of water-type Pokemon in the Hoenn region, along with Alola being some of the most water-dense regions in all of Pokemon. So like, you want more room for water Pokemon, but what about every other species of Pokemon? And what about humans? Like, what are they going to do once the world is flooded, or at least specifically Hoenn is flooded? Because we don't know how the other regions would look at the time, since, according to Pokemon Canon, Ruby and Sapphire and Red and Blue take place simultaneously, so that's kind of funny. But, so it makes me wonder what Kanto would have looked like if it was in a drought, or what it would look like if it was flooded. Discussions for other days, I guess. It's like, I don't see how either of those plans benefit the evil teams in any way. It just seems like a really half-baked idea for an evil team. Plus, another stupid thing that they both did. So tell me this. Groudon and Kyogre. Groudon being red and Kyogre being blue. Using the red orb or the blue orb, which one did you think that Archie and Maxie respectively would have chose? For some reason, Maxie chose the blue orb for Groudon, and Archie chose the red orb for Kyogre, which sent them into a madness. Understandably, why would you choose the wrong orb? You wanted to control them. Choose the blue. That seemed like a really stupid, deliberately stupid choice by Game Freak for them. Like, honestly, Team Aqua and Magma are easily my least favorite evil team of any of the Pokemon teams. Sure, there are later evil teams that are more lame, like Team Flare or Team Yell, but their intentions are just so stupid. Like, you can tell Game Freak didn't really think their plan through. Like, they could have had better motivation. They could have had a better reason to do what they did. They could have made better decisions, like, oh, I don't know, choosing the blue orb for Kyogre and the red orb for Groudon. Jeez, was that so hard to do? Or is Archie and Maxie just brain dead? I don't know. That was such a dumb decision looking back. But otherwise, Ruby and Sapphire, most things I already mentioned in the Omega Ruby and F Sapphire set. Pretty damn good games, I'd say, aside from their immediately very weak evil team. Fire Red, Leaf Green, another game I remember playing back in the 8th grade. Again, back when Ursa's latest Pokemon game, before Sun and Moon came out. I remember playing this a little bit too. Just before I got that Pokemon Sapphire emulator, that is. I used to grind in this all the time in between classes too, whenever I didn't have assignments to do, while preparing for Elite Four. And I remember my team being Charizard, Exeggutor, Gyarados, Dragonite, Magneton, and a Nidoking. A Nidoking with Poison Sting, by the way, because I didn't have it, because you couldn't get Sludge Bomb as a TM in this game. And, so, I mean, maybe I should remake that team in Champions or something just for fun. I could play against my viewers too if y'all want to see that. But Fire Leaf Green, I think I'll put these, because I really do like these games a lot more than their original counterparts. I think I'll put it in low S tier. Actually, I'll put it below Black and White. I do really like these games. Definitely does a lot well from the original Red and Blue. And also another Pokemon game to make a playable female character too. I think like the third Pokemon game to do that, if I remember correctly. Yeah, after Crystal and Ruby Sapphire. Leaf also kind of goes into the Pokemon world really well too. And just like the other remakes, a lot of the character redesigns are very good too. No, that also, did I mention Oris was my second favorite remake? Nah, I think Fire Leaf Green is my second favorite remake, as you can see here. So I'll just correct myself there. The Sevii Isles is based on the Orange Islands from the anime, which is always pretty cool. And so I thought that was a really nice addition. The Elite Four and a lot of the game bouncing is mostly the same to the original Red and Blue, as well as the area a lot of Pokemon are found in, so not much else to talk about that I didn't already talk about. The enhanced soundtrack is also really good too. The Safari Zone's a little different to how it was in the original. There's a lot of things they changed around here that I think were pretty cool additions. So, we'll put that in the low S tier. Pokemon Emerald, another Pokemon game like Pokemon Platinum that I didn't really play that much. I played a little. I remember playing it back in the 7th grade, while we were doing some like big test or whatever at the end of the year. And I only ever got up to, like, beating Roxanne. I remember having a Ralts on my team. I think a Seedot. And, obviously, my Mudkip that evolved into a Marshtomp. I beat, Roxanne because I had plenty of time to do it. We were sitting in there for hours after we were done with that test. So I was able to do that for plenty of time. So I think I was also playing a little Minecraft around that time, too, for whatever reason, on those old computers. I mean, those computers don't exist anymore, so that old copy of Pokemon Emerald is long gone, no matter what I do. But yeah, I didn't really make it that far into it, but I've seen other gameplay for the Battle Frontier. This is the one battle facility I don't think I ever played, actually, in any Pokemon game. Of any of the Pokemon games with battle facilities. I'll probably change that one of these days. I can always get, like, a Pokemon Emerald emulator, which I already have on my PC, by the way. So, I just barely played it, honestly. But that Battle Frontier, really cool. I think whenever I do finally get to fully play it, I'll probably rank that a little bit more. But otherwise, a lot of things that Oris would later on add are in this game, like the thing with Rayquaza, and being able to get Rayquaza before the 8th gem I think is a little broken. I know later games will do that too, Like, you get Xerneas and Yveltal on X and Y before the 8th gym. You could get Kyogre and Groudon before the 8th gym, and both Ruby and Sapphire and its remake. A lot of games, you could do that with Palkia and Dialga in Diamond and Pearl, which in my opinion is a little broken. You should save that for at least before the Elite Four, in my opinion. Which some games like Black and White 2 will do that better. Actually, you can't even get either of those guys till the post-game. Never mind what I just said there, but yeah. Heart Gold Soul Silver would do something like that, where you can get the legendary Pokemon after you beat the 8th gym leader, when the original Gold and Silver didn't really do that. All that stuff. Which, again, just, I guess some slight minus points for Pokemon Emerald there. I think I'll put Pokemon Emerald, just because I haven't really played it fully, so I'm definitely going to put it, I think mid B tier is fair. Funny how I put all the 3rd version games, besides Ultra and Ultra Moon, in B tier. That's actually kind of funny. But there's a lot this game does, right? There are some, like, I think I prefer May and Brendan's Ruby and Sapphire design to their Emerald design, which is alright. Besides that, I can't really think of anything else this game did differently to Ruby and Sapphire, so until I fully played it more, I think I'll keep it in B tier for now. I played it a little and seen some gameplay of it, so let's put it there. Alright, now we're on to the Switch games. So, before I talk about Skull and Violet, let's just pretend that Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are there. I know those technically don't count as mainline games, but I'll count them. Just pretend that Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee here, and I'm putting them E tier. I kind of dislike them enough to put them in F tier, but I kind of want something in E tier, so I'm just gonna go in E tier. Now, the reason for that being, y'all, during my Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee Nuzlocke, y'all know how much I really am not the biggest fan of this game. Okay, let's start with some of the positives. The game, it looks nice. It's a gorgeous looking game. I'll give it that. Chase and Elaine are also pretty neat characters in my opinion. I like their character designs quite a bit too. And a lot of the redesigns we get in this game, like for Misty, or for Erica, or for Blaine, are also really neat redesigns as well. This is the first Pokemon game since Heart Gold Soul Silver to finally bring back follow Pokemon, and I think it's done pretty well in this game. In the first Pokemon game, unless you count Latios, Laios, Soaring, and Oris, where you can actually ride on certain Pokemon and fly on them. It's kind of like that, but a little more fleshed out. And y'all saw in my Nuzlocke, riding on top of Charizard, or Ifrit the Charizard, was really cool, and man was I having a rush when I was doing that. I'll give it that. That's really neat. This game also brings back Mega Evolution, but without abilities for some reason, so certain Megas like Kangaskhan or Charizard Y are not going to have the best time, or at least as they normally would if they had their abilities. Since most Megas kind of hinge on their abilities to be useful. Same with Mega Gengar, and all of that. The soundtrack, far from one of my favorite soundtracks in a Pokemon game. I already mentioned the redesigns. It's also one of the easier Pokemon games in my opinion, especially with how the candy system works. If you grind on that, you're going to have a super easy time. Like, I remember somebody saying you could beat the entire game with, like, the entire Elite Four with a level 3 Metapod because of that. That's how you know the game bounces broken if you can do something like that. Alright, anything else positive I can think of? I like how some trainers use a lot of different gimmick teams, too, depending on their trainer class, which is a really neat touch. I mean, previous Pokemon games kind of did that, too, but I think Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee takes it to the most extreme. The Master Trainer is also a really neat change, not change of pace, but a really neat post-game thing you can do. But now let's get on to the things I don't like about Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Hold on, everybody, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tirade here. Alright, I mentioned the game was too easy, especially because of the candy system. I hope we never get another Pokemon game like this ever again. I hate the Pokemon Go cash mechanics. They suck, especially if you're only using one Joy-Con. It is so bad. If y'all want to know how much I hate it, just look at my Pokemon Let's Go Eevee Nuzlocke. You'll see how much I hate the catch mechanics in that game. But, other than that, what else? I already mentioned that the game was too easy. Trace, one of the worst Pokemon rivals. He's probably the worst Pokemon rival. Along with some other rivals, like most of the X and Y rivals, not all of them. Just Trevor and Cyrano, they kind of suck. Shauna kind of sucks too, but lots of things to talk about her. And Brendan and Ruby and Sapphire specifically. I mean, Oris will kind of later fix them, thanks to the post-game battle that you have right after you leave 4. The only problem is, Steven's highest level Pokemon, his ultimate Metagross, was level 59. While their highest level Pokemon was level 50, so if you didn't have much trouble against Steven, or if you beat Steven, and you will in order to get to this fight, you're going to have an easy time with May and Brendan. So, minus points for that too on that rival, specifically and on that game. But back to Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Some of the route design, I mean, they also got rid of HMs and replaced it with the secret moves, which is pretty cool. It's a nice little change of pace. adding fairy types. You got a little world building with a young Mina being in that game, so it kind of places a timeline into the game too. That's a slight plus, I guess. Pokemon popping up in the overworld is pretty neat too, I guess. Especially if you find a shiny. Which I remember in the middle of my Nuzlocke while I was grinding, I found a shiny, Pidgey. And yeah, I just had to catch off screen because I didn't want to lose it if I tried to stream that section, so I had to catch it, so... I mean, per Nuzlocke rules, it is shiny claws, so it technically still counts as long as I was still able to catch it. So there's that. So I guess small bonus points for that little feature. Other than that, the catch mechanics are bad, the game's too easy. This game has one of the worst Pokemon rivals ever, which is a freaking Pokemon Stadium FC. His team just sucks ass, even though he's using a Mega Pidgeot, far from one of the best Megas, even with its ability, so there's that. Without its ability, it's even worse. Other than that, I just hate Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, mostly just for the catch mechanics and some other things they do wrong. Soundtrack's okay. Well, actually, it's not the best soundtrack either. Definitely, kids always had one of the weaker soundtracks, in my opinion. But other than that, alright, now we get on to Scarlet and Violet. Yeah, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee and Eats here. Scarlet and Violet, look, honestly, I love this game. I'll be real. I think you're all probably gonna not like me for this, but I think I'll either put it at high A tier, like low S tier, anywhere between. Let's put it like high A tier. Honestly, one of my favorite modern Pokemon games, personally, but of the more classic-y ones, it definitely ranks much lower. Now, aside from how much I've played this on my channel, which definitely contributes to how much I like this game, look, starting with the negatives, it's a glitchy-ass game. It's basically the Sonic 06 of Pokemon games. Just normally playing it, you're gonna see a lot of weird shit. And just like any Pokemon game from X and Y onward, yeah, there's a lot of rush into it, and I'd say this shows it more than any Pokemon game. Like, super buggy, super glitchy, and the game's going to crash on you quite a bit. It's very infuriating to have to deal with. But onto the positive side of things. I love a lot of the Pokemon designs in this game. I like some of the character designs, not all of them, particularly Grusha and Penny. I hate their designs. Same with Rika. Her design's kind of bad too, but those are the only character designs, like, of the main characters I could think of that are bad. Every other character, pretty much either from good to great. We got Nimona, we got Arven, they're cool. Professor Sada and Turo, they're cool. Best probably a girl, Miriam, by the way. She's awesome. Dendra's got a cool design. Rayfort's cool. Who else am I forgetting? That Rainfort chick is pretty cool. Iono's really cool. Tulip's cool. Brassius is a cool dude. Katie's cool. Kofu's kind of eh. Our boy Larry, easily one of the best Pokemon characters to ever exist. Rhyme is pretty cool, as well as her sister Time's cool. Like, it's a lot of, aside from the 3 character designs I mentioned that I really don't like in this game, all the other character designs are pretty damn good. Or pretty much from good to great. Onto the new Pokemon, we got things like Tickaton the Demon. Golden Go. The 3 starters, well, 2 of the starters are really cool. Skeleturge and Meowscarada, they're awesome. I hate Quaquaval, though. That thing sucks. Design-wise, at least. Battle-wise, it's alright, but design-wise, God, it's awful. And part of the same reason I just like Grusha's design or Penny's design, they just look terrible. My God. I'm not the biggest fan of that woke design, let's just say. And the queer designs, I'm not the biggest fan of those. I don't like them. I just don't like it. It's awful. I hate it. Let's see. There's some other problem. Kilowattrel is awesome. And all that. Terrestrialization, probably my favorite gimmick battle-wise. Though, thematic-wise, I still prefer Mega Evolution. Like, this easily, at least until Pokemon Champions comes out, this is easily my favorite Pokemon game to do competitive play in. Not only is it super easy to get competitive items now, no longer have to really grind all that much anymore. EV training's also easier too. No super battling, you could just... I mean, Sword and Shield did the same thing as well, and we'll talk about that later. But no need to branch out the different little EV things you use. The EV things like protein and HP ups. You can just use them all in one stat if you choose to, which I did all the time, which started it in Sword and Shield. The Terra Raid's also really fun, albeit a little janky sometimes. Going back into the glitchy thing, the Paradox Pokemon. I think I still prefer the Ultra Beasts, but the Paradox Pokemon are really cool too, and in some ways do surpass the Ultra Beasts. Like, you got your Flutter Mage, you got your Gaijin Fire, you got Iron Hands. Oh, you got the worst Paradox Mon, that being Iron Jugulus. I hate that thing. But still. And a lot of others are really cool. Rolling Moon, Iron Crown, Iron Boulder, they're all really cool. I wish the future Paradox Pokemon just had better naming schemes. The 3 different... This game, kind of like the Gen 7 games, also do a little change of pace of the story. We are not only trying to become the very best like nobody ever was, but you got the Gym Leader and Champion story. You got the Titan stories, which are very similar to the Noble Pokemon in Legends Arceus and the Totem Pokemon in the Gen 7 games. And then the Team Star Boss story with the evil team of the game, which Team Star, far from the best evil team, but they're definitely more relatable compared to other evil teams. Since they were just bullies that were bullied. There were people who were retaliating against the people that bullied them, and they kind of became the bullies in the process. So I can see that kind of being relatable for some people. Definitely the most relatable evil team, I'd say. And even after you're done with all 3 stories, there's still more. And you fight the true final boss of the game. Spoiler alert, even though this game's been out for like 2 years now at the time of me making this video. Now we're doing with Professor Sada and Turo as the final bosses of the game. And you get to finally use Crawdon/Miraidon, depending on your version, to battle them against their Crawdon/Miraidon. Which I think is a really good finale. Probably the best finale to any Pokemon game, honestly. And now let's get onto the DLC. Both the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc, definitely better than Sword and Shield's DLCs in my opinion, but we'll get to that later on. Ogerpon and Terapagos are also really good. Arcaludon being some Pokemon they introduce. Sinistcha, also really cool. Just more Pokemon you can make more teams around. Both Kitakami, which has some references to Johto in there, a more rural-based region, as well as as the Blueberry Academy straight up taking place in the Unova region, my favorite region of all the regions. And that's really neat. And the different Elite Four things, the new rivals, we got Kieran and Carmine, they're both pretty cool. Actually, Kieran's a pretty neat rival, I like him. Even if he's a little unlikable in the Indigo Disc DLC, after how much we had to battle him so many times and just put him in his place, as they say. The amount of times we had to do that. So it's all really fun and whatever. And again, EV training and all the events that come out, that are still coming out at the time of making this video. It was all really, really fun, all great fun. Definitely my favorite Pokemon game to be competitive in. A lot of characters I really like, even though there's 3 I really hate. I mean, they're still all worse than Claire. Claire's still worse than all of them, but yeah. Claire's still worse than all of them. I'll take those 3 weirdos' designs over Claire any day of the week. At least their personalities are fine, I guess. Let's give them that. Unlike Claire's arrogant ass, I hate her, but yeah. Enough trash talking her. The environments in Scarlet and Violet are all really cool. The legendary Pokemon like the Treasures of Ruin. Though the loyal 3 kind of suck, but the Treasure of Ruins, all 4 of them are pretty cool. Though with Wochi and Live Reaction being kind of a weak link. Other than that, I think Scarlet and Violet I put in A tier. I put it easily in S tier if it wasn't for how goddamn glitchy the game is. Like, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it's so sad too. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have chances of being one of the best Pokemon games ever. But because of how glitchy and Sonic 06 like it is, it ends up falling flatter because of it, and because of that, it ended up getting some of the worst reviews out of any Pokemon games, yet having some of the best sales of any Pokemon game. Just behind Red and Blue and Sword and Shield, I believe. Which is kind of funny, actually. But discussion for another day. If the game was just more optimized and had more time on it, which I'm glad this game got the backlash it did, along with its DLC, because that means later on, they took their time with Legends ZA. I guarantee you, if this game didn't get the backlash it got, we would have gotten Legends ZA in 2024 as opposed to late 2025. Again, at the time I'm making this video, the game isn't out yet. So I'm glad we had that backlash, because we can finally get actual time and effort. Well, just time, because I know effort is partially being put in these games, they just don't have fully the time to flesh out said effort. So these games would honestly be one of my all-time favorite Pokemon games up here with these 3, if it just had more time put into it and was more well polished. It's like, this is why you don't rush game developers with their game, and I want to take as much time as I can for my games to make them as best for you people and all my other people who might play my games in the future. Like, rushing game developers is like taking Gordon Ramsay, like one of the best chefs of all time in our time, and telling him to bake a wedding cake. Sounds good so far, right? But then you give him like 5 minutes to make that wedding cake. It's going to take a few hours normally to make said wedding cake, but you only give him like 5 minutes. Of course it's going to come out bad. That's the case with Scarlet and Violet. Because they barely had real time to be worked on, because of how rushed it was for the annual releases Pokemon have been going through for the last decade or so, since like freaking 2010, aside from not getting a Pokemon game in 2015, which originally was supposed to be Pokemon Z, by the way, but that never happened. And imagine if Pokemon Z had come out. Now Pokemon games we would have had onward from there, Sun and Moon, Ultra Moon, would have been even worse. Just saying. So, like, give your developers time to make their games. Don't be like the guy who only gives Gordon Ramsay 5 minutes to make the freaking wedding cake. Or, let's be generous, 10 minutes to make that wedding cake. It's still going to come out like ass because you need more time to do that. He probably wouldn't be done with the batter by then. And that's the case here. Like, a lot of the textures do look a little outdated. I wouldn't say it looks bad, it just looks outdated. And the game is extremely glitchy. As well as this is the first Pokemon game to really redesign some Pokemons too, like Charizard or Persian or Mewtwo. I don't really like how Mewtwo looks in this game, but he's still redesigned. Pikachu, like, a lot of Pokemon will have different fur textures or scale textures or shiny textures if they're made out of metal, which looks really nice. Now, if this game had more time to be worked on, it could look even better. And, like, I like how they redesigned a lot of these models, too. It's like Charizard looks so much more ferocious. Same with Venusaur and Blastoise. They look great. They look awesome. They look swell as all hell. Rhyme intended. Just so much this game does right, but if it just was more polished and actually functioned instead of being the Sonic 06 of Pokemon games, it would probably be one of the best Pokemon games of all time. Really good story, really good branching paths. It's a game that tries to be non-linear, but at the same time it fails to because no level scaling, which I hope if we get Generation 10 that game has level scaling. Well, we have to wait and see. If this game had voice acting, I'd probably put it in low S tier, all of that. There's a lot this game does right, but a lot of things this game does wrong too, and it makes me sad because I really, really want to have Pokemon Scarlet and Violet as one of my all-time favorite Pokemon games up there with these three, but sadly I can't because of how damn glitchy and little time was put into it. But that's enough rambling about Scarlet and Violet. Let us move on to the worst Pokemon game ever created. Worst mainline game. There are probably spin-offs that are worse than this, but this is worse than any ROM hack I've played / heard of. This is worse than any of the other mainline games we've talked about so far and the other games we'll talk about. I hate BDSP. Let me drink a little water first, because I've been talking quite a bit. Excuse me. Easily one of the worst Pokemon games to ever exist. Again, if you want more information on my rants about this, go look at, I think, episode 15 of my Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee episode. For my Pokemon Eevee Nuzlocke. But this game is so bad. Like, I already put Diamond and Pearl into C tier over here before, but this is just, it's basically, here's what I'll say. This is basically Diamond and Pearl, but on the Switch. That's it. Just Diamond and Pearl on Switch. Like, this game had so little time and effort put into it as a faithful remake. I hope y'all can see the quotations I'm putting up, even though I'm not on camera. But, just, like, it's literally just Diamond and Pearl, but on Switch. That's it. That's all I can say about this game. Like, if you were going to be this faithful of a remake, you might as well have just ported Diamond and Pearl on the Switch and changed it up a little bit since, you know, Switch and DS are fundamentally different consoles with how they function. Like, they might as well have just done that with how they did this. First of all, this is the first Pokemon game that wasn't developed by, like, first mainline game, that wasn't developed by Game Freak themselves, instead by Ilka, who helped develop games like Bioshock. The only problem is, actually not Bioshock, I'm wrong about that. They didn't develop any game, actually, at the time of this release. They helped develop things like Pokemon Home and stuff, and even then Pokemon Home didn't work all that well. So, because of that, this game ended up not really working well either. I mean, the graphics, I don't dislike the chibi models as much as most people do. In fact, when I first saw the trailer back in 2021, I thought it looked alright. A lot of people didn't really like the way it looked, but I think the chibi models were fine. Even though I'd argue the chibi models in X and in the Gen 6 games were better, and they looked taller too, unlike these weird bobblehead-looking like models. And a lot of people didn't like the way they moved either, and a lot of the weird camera angles too. Yeah, that too. And while not as glitchy as Scarlet and Violet, these are some decently glitchy games too. Though a lot of these glitches, again, you kind of have to go out of your way to cause them. The level scaling is terrible because, unlike the original, you're forced to have the XP share in this game, which, at least in the Gen 6 and 7 games, you can, except Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, you can turn off the XP share. At least in Sword and Shield, that game was kind of more balanced around the XP share. Not this game, nope, not this game. This game has the same levels because it's a faithful remake. It has to have the same levels as the original. So you're going to end up over-leveled up until the post-game, or not the post-game, the Elite Four, which we'll get to, oh, don't worry, we'll get to that later. What else? A lot of the redesigns, also, they've kind of ruined Best Girl Jasmine's redesign in this game. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I mean, it's still a cute outfit, I guess. But I'm really not the biggest fan of this outfit compared to her Gold Silver design or her Gold Soul Silver design. But maybe that's just what she wears when it's a bit colder, since Sinnoh is one of the more climatey, colder regions in the Pokemon world, while Johto's a little bit warmer. So maybe that's why she wears that different outfit, but I still prefer her Gold Soul Silver and Gold and Silver designs infinitely. And funnily enough, she's the only character in this game to actually get a redesign. Unlike previous remakes of the other 4 remakes we've talked about thus far, this is the only game to not do redesigns for their characters, which is just weird. You know why? Because, again, faithful remake. Say it with me, everybody. Faithful remake. Sounds more like an excuse for, hey, let's just remake this game and throw it on the console and barely change anything. Sure, it adds some different things like the soundtrack. It's okay. It's definitely a step up from the original game's already decently forgettable soundtrack, in my opinion, for the most part, in my opinion. Not as good as remakes in Heart Gold Soul Silver or Oris, in my opinion, but yeah, or in Fire Leaf Green for that matter, in fact. But remakes are fine. Ramanas Island replaces Pal Park from the original, and the problem with that is, unlike other games, you can catch a lot of legendary Pokemon in it, which Ultraman also gets some more points for that too, forgot to mention that earlier. This game also allows you to catch a lot of legendaries from Gen 1 to 3, which is pretty cool, and then some of the Gen 4 ones as well. But you have to beat the post-game in order to do that. And the Battle Tower, which, look, after I beat Cynthia, this is, I think, the one Pokemon game, outside of, transferring things over to Legends Arceus later on. This is the one Pokemon game I think I've ever played. Every other Pokemon game I've played to and finished, I've always played even after the champion. Well on, and pretty much more onward, even after the next game came out, too. After Black and White 2 came out, I remember playing Black and White a little bit more after that. Or actually, after Black and White had been out for a while, I remember going back to Heart Gold Soul Silver for a bit back in summer of 2012. And I think I remember... Did I beat it back then? No, that was summer of 2011, I think, when I beat it back then, yeah. Summer of 2012, I didn't play it a good while, and then when I was in the 5th grade, before Black and White 2 came out, I remember playing Heart Gold Soul Silver for a bit, instead of Pokemon Black and White. So that was pretty neat, I'd say. And finding some new content I hadn't found before then. But then here, after I beat Cynthia, I hadn't played the game since. I think I did one round of the Battle Tower after that, and then I literally haven't picked up the game since back in late 2021. That's how much I honestly didn't like this game. And generally, it's rare for me to do that in games. If games actually have post-games. Eventually, I'll end up going back to it, and I own hundreds of games. And that collection will still be growing, too. I own hundreds of games. And I think this is the one game I've ever played and actually finished, where I was just I did a tiny bit of post-game content, haven't picked it up since. I don't think there's any other game that has a post-game that I've played fully where I've done that before. I'll be dead honest. That's how much I really didn't like this. I mean, I kind of like how you move faster here compared to the original. That's one plus this game definitely does. Though you still kind of move in a grid-like system, even though you can move diagonally now, unlike in the original, which is a little janky. Oh yeah, you know what else? Falling Pokemon, remember how cool it was in Heart Gold Soul Silver? Remember how you could ride on your Pokemon in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee? And they followed you no matter which Pokemon it was, even some of the slower Pokemon? Well, here they butchered the absolute shit out of that. So Pokemon like Ekans or Rayquaza are going to look absolutely stupid, all curled up, like they're doing the snake version or serpentine version of a lotus pose or some garbage, whatever you want to say for that. And they're kind of just floating next to you, and they could have used, a lot of people say they could have used the Pokemon Rumble 3D models from Gen 1 to 4 Pokemon, which I can kind of see they touched up a little bit to fit the rest of the game's art style, obviously, but I can kind of see what they're on about here. But it just looks absolute dog shit, and for what? They really butchered that up. Even after how bad Sword and Shield's follow mechanic was in that game when Isle of Armor for some reason came out. They didn't have that in the base game. But yeah. But we'll talk about that one later on. What else can I say? Oh yeah, the Elite Four. This horrid level design. Remember what I said that before the levels were the same as in the original? Well, that's the same case with the Elite Four here. Only this time, you are fighting competitively viable Pokemon with competitively viable movements. Like Aaron, the Bug-type leader, or Elite Four, will have a Heracross with Flame Orb and Facade and Guts. Why? First of all, if you had access to your own competitive Pokemon and your own EVs and IVs and stuff like that, I can see this, honestly, and you know it's coming too, which, and in most cases, even if you did have access to that, you wouldn't know this is coming the first go-around. I could see that being more fair, but you don't have access to that until the post-game. So you're kind of at a handicap, a negative handicap here, against competitively viable Pokemon, like Cynthia's Garchomp having Ouchie Berry, which weakens Ice-type moves. Having Dragon Claw, Earthquake, and what other move did I have? I think Poison Jab or Iron Head for Fairy types, if I remember correctly. I don't know. And then Swords Dance as a boosting move, which, because of how fast and bulky Garchomp is, it is very likely to get off that Swords Dance and can outspeed most of your Pokemon and just sweep the rest of your team if you are not careful. So if you do not know this is coming around, you are going to be blindsided and you are going to have a bad time. Good game design, really. Game Freak. Or actually, it wasn't Game Freak. Ilka in this case. I swear to God, they were allergic to good game design here. Again, if the player had access to competitive things as well, then I can see this being more fair. But you don't have access to that. At most, you have access to some EV training, but random natures aren't going to work too well. Random IVs are definitely not going to work too well. You don't have access to competitive items like they do. And they got a lot of competitive strats too, like Flint with the worst Pokemon ever exist, with fucking Strength Sap and Minimize? Why? And then a hidden ability in front of him. I'd love to know where the flying fuck he got that. Lucian with his Trick Room strategies and even having Pokemon with minimum speed. speed lowering natures, and no speed IVs, because that's fair to go against. And Pokemon that are very likely to get Trick Room off, like Bronzong and stuff. Like, what in the mother of cheese? It's like, you're not going to be prepared for any of this shit. The game does a horrible job of preparing you for such a ginormous level curve. It's not even a skill issue at that point. That's just horrid game design and illogical level balancing there. At least give the player the option to make competitively viable Pokemon themselves, to make it more fair, to level the playing ground. It's like in a battle facility where you can at least use items, but still. But oh yeah, the Elite Four and Champion can use held items too. Well, not held items. I meant to say, well, yeah, held items, but I meant to say full restores. So you're basically doing competitive play, and they can use items. I mean, I know you can use them too, but that just makes it even more unfair. Why? Bullshit. That definitely gets some minus points for me too. And a lot of things like Cyrus is a lot less intimidating than he was in the original. The soundtrack is definitely weaker. I do like the optional Shadow Giratina fight you can do in the Distortion world. One piece of platinum content they did put in. And the Underground is definitely probably one of the few things about BDSP that I actually enjoyed. I did enjoy, like back in 2021 before I started doing content creation, I did enjoy going into the Underground and finding new Pokemon down there as the story progressed. That was always pretty nice. Depending on what part of Sinnoh you were at, you get to different parts of the Underground, which are pretty cool. That I'll say is a nice plus. I do like that addition. And in the postgame, you can even get all the Star Pokemon that way too, which is pretty cool. But then the Battle Tower, unlike previous battle facilities, not to confuse it with Sword and Shield's Battle Tower, very underwhelming. I only did like one round, didn't bother going for it after that, and haven't picked up BDSP since. And honestly, I think I remember saying I was going to Nuzlocke this game at some point. Nah, if I ever Nuzlocke a Sinnoh game, it's going to be Platinum. I'm not doing BDSP. Because that's just how much I dislike this game. And honestly, just like I said about the Dunsparce in my Scarlet and Violet tier list, for Scarlet and Violet Pokemon, honestly, BDSP feels like a game that's, like, you can tell Game Freak didn't really want to make it, so much so that they just let another studio make it. And it just feels like BDSP was purely made just to get fans to shut up about Diamond and Pearl remakes that fans have been clamoring on about since, like, 2017, at least that's when I first started hearing about it. Like, y'all remember the FURT on the escalator? And it would keep playing until they released? The Diamond and Pearl remakes are released? Yeah. Too bad that was all for naught, kind of. Well, not for naught, but for less. Because it's just so underwhelming. Such a bad game. It could have been so much more, like what previous remakes did. Imagine Diamond and Pearl and Sword and Shield's art style, which in my opinion is a pretty decent art style. A lot of people don't like how Sword and Shield looked. I thought it looked alright. Like, it would have been so cool at that. Just like how Fireleaf Green was in Ruby and Sapphire's art style, Heart Gold Soul Silver was in Diamond and Pearl's art style, and Oris was in X and Y's art style. This would have looked so cool, but nope. Sadly, they decided to go the faithful route and decided to give it a whole different art style, which could have worked, but that art style, well, it's alright. It doesn't look all that bad. Heck, the in-battle models for some of the NPCs, like the female psychics or the male hikers, those all looked pretty cool. Those actually, like the in-game models, when you're doing battle, all of them look really good. That's one plus this game does as well, in my opinion. As well as how expressive they are after you beat them. Like, hell, I like the little hair flip that Cynthia does right when you start at the battle. That's really nice. Or how some characters will emote more when they're commanding their Pokemon to use a move. More than what the Gen 7 games did, where they kind of just point, I guess. Now, characters like Gardenia will kind of jump in the air with excitement when she's telling her Pokemon to do a move. Or Byron will slam down his shovel or something. Something like that. That's nice. I like that. That's a small plus this game definitely has. Other than that, it's bare bones. It's basically just Diamond and Pearl on Switch. That's it. They might as well just ported it to Switch and called it a fucking day. That would have saved a lot of time and money just doing that. And it just feels like BDSP was purely made just to get fans to shut up about Diamond and Pearl remakes, and that's it. Game Freak's like, here, you got it. Can you shut up now? That's what this game just feels like. And this game didn't even release fully either. This game was kind of released as a tech demo, too. At least on the first day until the first day update, which they gotta stop with first day updates. Like, or day one update patches. That shit is so stupid. Remember before DLC and updates were a thing, like, I want to say before the 7th gen era of gaming? Where once you got the game, no DLCs, no update patches. Whatever glitches or weird things or whatever the game was added in, whatever features the game added, the soundtrack, everything, that's how the game was till the end of time. But now with updates, they can just say, let's give you the game in an incomplete state. And with horror music. Most people might not know this. I didn't really notice this when I first played it on release day back in 2021. But this game actually released as a tech demo, as I said. Well, maybe not as a tech demo, maybe that's the wrong phrase to use, but kind of as a beta because a lot of the soundtracks were just placeholder soundtracks that sounded really scratchy until the real soundtracks were added into the game, like the battle theme. Sounded really scratchy, and it was just so bad. It's like you didn't release the game with a proper soundtrack. You used placeholder soundtracks in the main game until they were patched out in the first update. For what? Anyways, if I talk any more about BDSP, which also sounds like a drug, by the way, I'll point that out. I know it's not, but it sounds like a drug. BDSP, whatever. If I say anything else about this game, I'm gonna probably burst down knives. I'm tired of talking about it. One more tiny thing I'll bring up. Don's little summer outfit you get after beating the game, though, after being sent. This is really nice. Probably another small addition, positive addition to this game. Definitely added that. I thought was pretty cool. But otherwise, Horde game, easily my least favorite Pokemon game. I don't think I'm ever, I know I'm going to keep my copy of Shining Pearl, but I don't think I'm ever playing it again. Not even in Nuzlocke form. I mean, I was considering shiny hunting Arceus, I guess, which, oh yeah, you know what? Let me talk about that little thing. I forgot about that. After Legends Arceus came out, BSP got a little kind of free download DLC, if you will, where you get to catch Arceus after you've finished everything in Legends Arceus, which in my opinion is just so stupid. That's basically them saying, hey, beat Legends Arceus and then go back to this game and get this other bonus so you can play this game again. And potentially shiny on Arceus, which, outside of shiny hunting Arceus, potentially, I don't think I'm ever touching BDSP ever again. So I just wanted to bring that up. Oh yeah, the obscure facts for catching Manaphy that you get in a separate game, by the way, which we'll talk about that in Let's Go Beat You in Legends Arceus. On how to, where you need certain Pokemon in order to get a Manaphy. Which you're not going to know that outside of, looking it up. How are you supposed to know that besides looking it up? And besides, in the age where I'd rather just look that stuff up. I'm not going to get some obscure-ass, very missable hint in a game that I don't even freaking like that much. Just saying. But other than that, easily one of the worst, if not the worst, Pokemon game ever to exist. And again, pretend Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are sitting in the E tier, since they're not on here. Alright, second to last, Pokemon Swords and Shields. I think I'll put this game in B tier, because look, I like the way the game looks, I like the new Pokemon that were introduced, the Galarian forms are all, except for maybe Galarian Slowpoke, were all really cool. A lot of the character designs, we got Marnie, we got Sonya, we got Leon himself, we got, Hop's a better rival than Hau in my opinion, he actually grows throughout the story too. And he's one of the few rivals along with Wally and Blue that change around their team as the game goes on, same with Nimona, and I think that's really cool. Though he is still a little annoying. And even reuses some animations from Hau for some reason. I don't know. I'll put it in mid-B tier. Actually, I'll put it above Pokemon Yellow. I'll put it in mid-B tier. Well, yeah, the game looks slightly bad in some cases. The Ocarina of Time trees everybody. And the wild area kind of seemed like a bit of a kind of test for open zone / open world that later Pokemon games will put out, like Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet. I liked Dynamax. It was okay. Nowhere near as good as Terrestrialization or Mega Evolution, I'd say, but Dynamax was alright. G-Max was a little underwhelming. They could have done more with it, but it was fine for the time, I guess, too. Besides that, the soundtrack's really good. Marnie's theme, Chairman Rose's battle theme was really cool. The Leon Champion theme, Eternatus' theme, Clara's theme, and the DLC. All those are really neat. The Galarian birds are cool. A lot of legendaries introduced. Calyrex is awesome. Urshifu, probably one of my all-time favorite legendary Pokemon. Not just for its design, but mainly for just how good it is in VGC, as well as Unseen Fist. Probably one of my favorite all-time abilities, up there with huge power and stuff. Anything that y'all know how much I hate Protect. Anything that goes Super Protect, I'm a big fan of. I will keep saying that. But along with that, the DLCs, Isle of Armor was kind of underwhelming. It was fine when it first came out, but as time went on, it definitely kind of lessened in value, in my opinion. At least till Crown Tundra came out. Crown Tundra coming out I thought was pretty decent, actually. And the different stories both DLCs had, I thought were pretty cool, too. Akara and Avery are pretty cool rivals out for Akara, for obvious reasons. Restricted battling, far from the best battle facility, but I thought it was a pretty cool battle facility. I remember finishing all 18 types of at least 5 rounds or more. I think I did 10 rounds on the electric type one. And you can actually use well, you can't use restricted legends like Zacian or Zamazenta in those, but you can use smaller legendaries like Terrakion or whatever, which I remember using before Crown Tundra came out, since I got that Terrakion via trade. And also, Sword and Shield were the first Pokemon games to bring in being able to change your Pokemon's natures. Though if you still wanted to hyper train your Pokemon, you had to get them level 100, which was easier than ever to do in this game thanks to the EXP candies. So yeah, Sword and Shield definitely get bonus points for me on that one. But yeah, you know what? I'll bump it up Sword and Shield to high B tier instead.
Because there's a lot, in my opinion, this game does right, that later games will kind of do a bit better, like Scarlet and Violet. But there was also some negatives. Once again, this game is also one of the easier Pokemon games, I'd say. The story is stupid. Chairman Rose is probably another one of the worst evil Pokemon villains as well, and he's a twist villain. Like, Chairman Rose kind of feels like they forgot the story needed a villain, so they just chose someone at random, and hey, that would be Chairman Rose. And he wanted to cause an Armageddon or a new Darkest Day just to solve an energy crisis that won't happen for another 1,000 years. That is so stupid. Wait a day, dude. And Leon even said himself, like, bro, you can wait a day. And Chairman Rose is like, nah, we're doing it now. Why? Just such a dumb... Again, I don't know why. Like, not all Pokemon evil teams, but most of them do dumb shit like that. It's so stupid. Like, and I'm glad he kind of turned himself into the police after you beat him. Because honestly, what he did was just dumb. Like, you're trying to solve an energy crisis that won't happen for another 1,000 years. And, funny, I remember Regieleku's Dex entry going on about how it can build power to the entire Galar region or something by itself. So, I know Regieleki didn't exist at the time when the game first came out. But Chairman Rose could have went right down to the Crown Tundra. Literally just get a Regieleki. He could have done that, but he just didn't for some reason. Again, I know it didn't exist at the time, but still, that was just so stupid. Just, my god, I don't like Chairman Rose. I mean, at least he's pretty decent as a sync pair in Pokemon Masters. I'll give him that. Microcosmos, probably the most forgettable evil team. Up there with, like, the Aether... Well, the Aether Foundation isn't that forgettable. They're kind of just the Aether Foundation, but even more forgettable and show up much later in the story. They're probably the most forgettable evil team. At least Team Flare, they're kind of stupid. At least Team Aqua and Magma, I do like some of their character designs, both in the original and in the remake of Oris. And sure, their motivations were kind of dumb, but at least they have memorable designs and stuff. And Team Yell, they're kind of more memorable too. And at least their motivations, they're just trying to help Mario get the championship title, even though they're doing it in obnoxious ways. They're just trying to help one of their people, Spikemouth, do better. Microcosmos, I even forget they exist half the goddamn time. They're just so forgettable, and their character designs are so generic too. The Battle Tower, which was before Rose Tower. The Battle Tower, I think, is, honestly, weirdly enough, at least until the DLCs, is the only post-game content that Sword and Shield had, which I think Sword and Shield is probably... Well, it has a tiny bit more post-game content, I'd say, than, say, Red and Blue. But Red and Blue is the first Pokemon game. Cut them some slack. Because, like, the only post-game content in that game was just Cerulean Cave and catching Mewtwo. That was it. Not counting completing the Pokedex, of course. But, in Sword and Shield, no new... I think this is the first Pokemon game, and definitely not the last. Scarlet and Violet will end up doing this, too. Like, Scarlet and Violet's post-game thing was just the Ace Tournament, I think, and that's it, pre-DLC. That was kind of it. Along with some Terra Raid events, which I know Sword and Shield, back when it was running, had Dynamax events, too, which were nowhere near as cool. The Dynamax raids are also kind of underwhelming, too, but we'll get to those in a second. Yeah, like, the Battle Tower is really the only post-game content you can get. I mean, you can get a Type Null up there, which is pretty cool, I guess. Aside from finishing the game's Pokedex, it's just do the Battle Tower, which I was able to get over 1,000 rounds on the single battle, and unlike earlier battle facilities, no super battle, or whatever. Probably because of the lack of a Pokedex we had, at least in the beginning of the game, since this was the first Pokemon game to do the Dex cuts. Everybody totally liked. No, nobody liked that, obviously, but still. What else can I say? Like, no post-game. Once you finish the game, aside from that and some other things like the Dynamax events, that was it. Just grinding the Battle Tower until the DLC came out, which at the time we didn't know we were even getting DLC until the game had been out for a good 2 months. Other than that, a lot of the Pokemon introduced were also really cool. Like Zacian and Zamazenta are probably some of the most broken sets of legendaries we've ever had, so much so they had to get nerfed in Scarlet and Violet. But they're both still really good in my opinion. Eternatus was pretty cool, and honestly, I'm the only one who thinks Eternatus kind of looks like an Ultra Beast. I feel like it's partially based on an Ultra Beast. It definitely looks like one. And its nice skeleton dragon design is pretty neat too, but we're not talking about Pokemon itself. I already mentioned Calyrex and Urshifu, they're really cool. Runraigus, Cursula, definitely one of my favorite regional forms, or regional evolutions to regional forms. Surfetch'd is awesome. Obstagoon is cool. Any other Pokemon you can think of. The Dynamax, the Max Layer raids in the Crown Tundra are also really neat. And again, you know, I'm a sucker for being able to catch multiple legendary Pokemon in a given game. That's one of those games you could do it, even though Scarlet Violet later on kind of did in a lackluster way, but whatever. I forgot to bring that up. The different areas. and different post-game things. I remember those rumors back when Crown Tundra first came out of being able to catch Victini, but that never happened. That was never a thing in-game. That's probably an unused event, though, to be honest. I never got the Poi you can get after catching 5 Ultra Beasts because I wanted to shiny hunt them, and I never got the chance to do. I mean, technically I can always go back and just do that off-screen if I wanted, but nah. I'm not gonna. Aside from that, a lot of really good soundtracks. I like the stadium gimmick too, where every gym, instead of just being like a generic kind of battlefield like they were in previous games, they're like a big old stadium, because one of the things in Galarian culture is that the gym challenge is kind of one big like sports event, which I think is pretty cool. It's a really nice little bit of world building there. And because of Dynamax, that explains why all those stadiums are not only built on power spots, which definitely has a bit of better lore than Zumu's had in my opinion, but whatever. It's all part of their little event. And because of the stadiums are being so big and the building on the top of the power spots, it allows them to use Dynamax as part of their little gym challenges. And unlike Mega Evolution or Z-Moves, where you can use them wherever you want, you can only use Dynamax in set areas. Which, in my opinion, makes it kind of more balanced, in my opinion, compared to other gimmicks. I'll give it that small bit. So you're not just spamming it whenever you want, like the other gimmicks. Aside from that, there's probably some other things I'm forgetting about with Sword and Shield. It also has overworld encounters like Gliscor, Pichu, and Eevee, only unlike those games, you can't see if they're shiny in the overworld, so yeah, that's just great. Let's see. Other than that, getting eggs, it's one of the few Pokemon games along with Oris to have more than one daycare if you want to do breeding, so that's pretty cool. Oh yeah, Scarlet and Violet does away with breeding, forgot to bring that up too, so it's a small plus. Well, it doesn't do away with breeding, but it does away with the daycare. Sword and Shield was also the first Pokemon game to change daycares being able to level up your Pokemon. I mean, it's the same game that has EXP candies, so you don't really need it. So it's not that big of a loss, honestly. Otherwise, Sword and Shield, I'll put in like high B tier. I definitely enjoyed playing this a lot back in senior year of high school. Really good. Probably the first Pokemon game I actually bought on my own with my own money, too. And now, finally, as my throat hurts, we have Legends Arceus. Actually a pretty decent game in my opinion. And a really nice change of pace to all the other games that we've gotten up to this point. I think I'll put it, but again, it kind of suffers from some similar issues that BDSP and Scarlet and Violet have, but they're kind of glitchy games. Like, I remember, again, you should watch my playthrough if you haven't, shameless plug. I remember, I think I'll put it like low A tier. Yeah, I'll put it low A tier, but, and look at that, this whole thing kind of makes the letter F if you look closely. But, whatever. Like a really deformed looking F, but whatever. Let's go Pikachu. Legends Arceus, I do like the idea, a whole Pokemon game that takes place in the past, and you can kind of see later events that will go on later on in Diamond and Pearl, which I think is pretty cool. I'd say 2021, 2022 were kind of the era of Generation 4 for Pokemon at the time, even if that wasn't the best Pokemon year, as I mentioned earlier, but yeah. Like, and I like the idea of being able to use different star Pokemon. They could have easily just been Chimchar, Piplup, and Turtwig, but they have, like, different forms or something for, like, the past to adapt to how the Sinnoh region used to be. But they took an extra step further and used starters from other Pokemon regions and gave them regional forms, which I thought was really cool, especially since one of them was my childhood baby, Cyndaquil. But, the different areas, and you can see what happened to different areas in later games, which I think is neat, especially Spear Pillar near the end of the game. Volo, while he does make for a really good final boss, I'd say, and he's also one of the few Pokemon villains to use more than 6 Pokemon against you, along with Greevil from Gale of Darkness, Getsus in Black and White 2, and Professor Sadansuro in Scarlet and Violet, using more than 6 Pokemon against you. And it makes for a really good surprise and a very challenging boss fight. I mean, once you see that Giratina is fought not once but twice, yeah, it'll definitely catch you by surprise the first time, but once you know it's there, you'll definitely be more prepared for it if you end up losing that fight. But Volo, far from the best villain. He doesn't really have much to show, like, why does he want to recreate the world in his image? Why does he want to meet Arceus so bad to recreate the world? Like, what backstory does he have in order for him to do that? It's kind of the same thing with Chairman Rose, not as stupidly as how Chairman Rose did it, but he kind of felt like another one of those last minute villains, honestly. He didn't even seem all that evil, too, and when they foreshadowed him being a villain, it was way too obvious. Like, way, way, way too obvious that he'd be a twist villain. It's like, basically, this is like Pokemon's version of a modern-day Disney twist villain, I'm telling you. And one of the things I learned to write a decent twist villain whether you're playing, writing, making a game or writing a movie, is to have some sort of other characters who could also potentially be twist villains too, or potentially be villains, kind of like false villains, if you will. And in that case, in this game's case, that was the Misfortune Sisters, Clover, Coin, and Charm, since they were kind of the villains of the game that kind of stopped you multiple parts throughout the entire game up until you battled Volo at the end of the game. And we learn later on Volo's the reason why we had all that lightning Hisui, causing all the noble Pokemon to go rampant, and causing that big hole distortion in the sky and all the space-time distortions that happened throughout the game. Alright, that's kind of neat, but again, why did he want, like, aside from trying to recreate the world, why does he want to recreate the world? We don't know this. It's never told us in the game. But I also like a lot of the references to previous characters, whether they were from Sinnoh or characters from other regions, like how Benny is Wally's ancestor, or how, Clover, I always get, no, it's not Clover. I think her name was Coin, or was it Charm? I get them mixed up. The one that looks like Agatha and Bertha is obviously Agatha and Bertha's ancestor, given that she uses, given that it's straight up stated that she's from Kanto, and she uses a Gengar and a Rhydon, which is pretty cool, the two signature Pokemon of Bertha and Agatha, respectively. Though I remember in Pokemon Black and White, Chantal stating, the Ghost type Blue 4 member, stating how they weren't related, so that's slightly retconned there, but whatever, it's fine. The music in Legends Arceus, not that much memorable. I mean, there's some pretty decent songs, like the normal battle theme, the Volo boss theme, those are pretty cool. And the final battle with Arceus, again, if you haven't seen my playthrough, you should. I remember playing that just before Scarlet and Violet came out. Really good. And heck, this is the game that kicked off my YouTube and Twitch channel anyway, so I'll give it some slight bonus points for that too, but definitely far from my favorite Pokemon game. And definitely not my favorite Pokemon game on Switch, but as I mentioned as well with how glitchy this game kind of is, well, not as glitchy as Scarlet and Violet later on. At least the game doesn't crash in on itself. But, I always notice, had anyone else noticed when you're at Snowpoint Temple, that the wall, including you and the Pokemon, and especially when you're fighting Regigigas, are also floating? Like, they're not properly attached to the ground. Again, more signs that this game was hella rushed. That they couldn't, and not even in updates either. It's still there like that to this day at the time of me making this video. Who knows, maybe it's still like that 10 years from now when if people were watching this video by then. Thank you for making this far, by the way, but yeah. It's like, why is this not fully attached to the ground? Like, there's certain trees in the main area of the game, Obsidian Fieldlands, I think it was called, that aren't even fully attached to the ground either. Like, you can tell this game is just hella rushed. I do like that this is the first game where you don't actively have to participate in battle to actually catch Pokemon too, which is pretty neat. And Scarlet and Violet won't really do that, but I think Legends EA will let her do that too, so that'll be pretty cool. What else could I say? A lot of the character designs are really neat, like Irida, Adaman's pretty cool. Ray and Akari are really cool redesigns of the Gen 4 Pro tags. Maya's pretty neat design-wise. Arzu best Legends Arceus girl, by the way. That Polina chick, she seems alright. Iskin, and a lot of people theorize that Iskin and Polina are Nessa and Sonia's ancestors, which could be pretty cool. I also like the little Easter eggs to like Alder and Alder's ancestor in the game in the picture, and how Maxie and Archie were originally part of the Diamond and Pearl clans respectively, which shows even back then, even over 100 years ago, they were still having rivalries with like the Team Aqua and Team Magma thing, kind of explaining the rivalry they had in, you know, Ruby Sapphire and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which is really cool. Though they're closer to their Ruby and Sapphire designs over their redesigns in Oris. Which is fine, I'd say. It's heavily implied that Levinson is Hoppin and Leon's ancestor, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of world building that this game does. I can't wait for Legends EA to later on do as well. Since Legends EA takes place in the future instead of the past. The Strong Style and Agile Style, which are actually, fun fact, were subtly hinted by the two Urshifu forms in the Sword and Shield DLC. Since one hits really hard and the other one does multiple hits, kind of referencing Strong Style and Agile Style. I always like when Pokemon does that. Like, they basically hint to their future games in very, very, very subtle ways, and I think that's really cool. I mean, most of the time you won't find out how they hinted at it until after the fact, but it's still a really neat way, in my opinion. To end up future games. Agile Strong Style and Agile Style, as I just mentioned, always really cool. And I like how the Legends games, and we'll see this later on with Legends EA, always have different battle systems to the mainline games, which helps to kind of further push them or set them apart from the mainline games, which I think is really cool. But I already mentioned how the different areas are really cool and what later came to be in Sinnoh. I also like how they refer to the different legendary Pokemon Palkia Dialga by Almighty Sinnoh, which is pretty cool, and that shows how the region got its name when it was originally Hisui. You get to choose Palkia or Dialga, depending on if you choose to side with Adamant or Irida, which because I originally chose both Pokemon Pearl and Shining Pearl, I went with Irida. And besides, I like Irida more between the two anyways. I always like that little face Irida makes too when you catch Heatran and she's waving herself with her hand. And just that hilarious face she makes. That face is funny as hell. And apparently she even does that in the snow biome or the Alabaster Icelands. It's like, if you think that's sweating in the Alabaster Icelands, how are you not dying on Firespit Island? I mean, she's absolutely dying after you catch Heatran, which, again, as I stated before, was pretty funny. One thing is, this is the one Pokemon game where you can catch Regigigas, but you can't catch the other Regis. So it's a little arbitrary on how you can't catch them. In my opinion, they should have put the three of them in this game, too, just to make it make a little more sense. I mean, hell, they later on put the Forces of Nature and added a new member to the Forces of Nature, too, so why not, right? They didn't even need to have the Galar Regis. I mean, this game has Pokemon from Gen 1 to 6, not counting the Rowlet line, obviously, since the only Gen 7, and the only post-Gen 6 Pokemon to be in the game, but otherwise. Anything else I can think of for this game? Again, it's another one of those Pokemon games where you're catching a lot of legendaries. I didn't like trying to catch the Forces of Nature, especially trying to catch Enamorus. That sucked. I caught Landorus first of the four of them. Well, three of them, since you have to catch Enamorus last, but still. The other two sucked. It took me forever to get Thundurus and Tornadus. Well, it took me forever to get Thundurus. Again, if you want to see me rage about it, it's on the channel. It's in my playthrough. You can catch Scaratuna. The Lake Guardian's easy to catch. I like that this game introduced a lot of cool new moves, like Sneaselor's, Dire Claw is always really cool. Chloroblast, which, not gonna lie, until like Scarlet and Violet came out, I didn't even know that move was a thing. It was basically just Grass-type Steel Beam, which I thought was really cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know that move existed until Scarlet and Violet. Victory Dance on Hisui and Lilligant. Mountain Gale, which another move I didn't even know existed up until Scarlet and Violet came out for Hisui and Avalugg. Still my least favorite Hisuian form. Shiny hunting is also pretty neat in this game, and just like in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, unlike in Sword and Shield, you can see shiny Pokemon in the overworld. The Alpha Pokemon are also really cool. They're Pokemon in the wild that can actually use the Strong Style and Agile Style, which is really cool. And will also have certain special moves that the normal Pokemon of their species would not normally have. It's basically like unique monster/tyrants in the Xenoblade games, which I think is really cool as well. Pokemon taking a little inspiration from another IP, that's always pretty neat. I mean, I take inspiration from some IPs myself from my own games too, so there's that. I mean, it's always neat to do. As long as you don't blatantly copy it, always put your own spin on it, which I like that Pokemon does that too. And I like that. Initially, when I was first playing Legends Arceus, I thought you couldn't catch the Alpha Pokemon, but I was proven wrong with that later on, and man, am I glad I was proven wrong later with that. So, yeah, there's probably some other things I'm completely forgetting with this game. But other than that, I really do. This game is pretty neat. Far from my favorite Pokemon game, as you can see, but it's a neat idea. I like what they did with it. I hope they expand on this even more Legends ZA and later Legends games. And this game definitely did well compared to some games that came before it and even games that came after it. And the Legends formula is really cool. Just still a pretty glitchy game. Some of the story elements like Volo clearly weren't fully fleshed out, and that's okay. Well, that's not okay, but still. I like some of the character customization options in this game too. More so than Scarlet and Violet's customization options. And more so than Sword and Shield's customization options, I'd argue. Not as good as X and Y or Sun and Moons, I'd say, but yeah. Other than that, it's a pretty neat game, and I like it quite a bit. I like a lot of different characters, I like a lot of the aspects, all the mechanics are pretty cool. Just a bit of a glitchy game, and some characters could have been better fleshed out. And the game, I wouldn't say, again, just like with Scarlet and Violet, I wouldn't say it looks bad. It just looks a bit outdated. A lot of people say it looks like a high-grade PS2 game, low-grade PS3 game. I can kind of see where they're on about with that. But otherwise, Legends Arceus is actually a really cool game, and I'll put it in the middle of A tier, but there are other games I like more than it. And with that being said, that is every single mainline Pokemon game, and again, remember, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, just pretend that's an E tier, and after what I said about that game. So, and that's it for this part of the 1,000 subs special. Thank you everybody for helping me to get to that wonderful milestone. So, if you all enjoyed this and you want to see more, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and follow. Or just leave a like, comment, and subscribe. This isn't on Twitch. And hit the bell button for more if you're for those of you watching and made it this far. I don't know, I'm going to do more tier lists in the future, but I'm going to think of some other tier list ideas for other future subscriber specials. So stay on tuned for that, and keep on the lookout for that. We'll also have way more 1,000 sub specials too. So, answer the question of the day as well. For, of all the Pokemon games, if you'd like to make your own tier list, go ahead and make your own tier list too. If you want to even have an explanation on each Pokemon game, please do if you have the time for it. And answer the question today, which Pokemon game is your favorite and why? Let us know. Anyways, consider becoming a YouTube member for $3 a month as well too. And thank you all for watching and have a very day. Once again, thank you for 1,000 subs.